News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News, weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 24th of May. Today, the Prime Minister claims his Labour counterpart doesn't have the courage to debate him, as he has no plans for the country.
A poll reveals that reform could pose a threat to 28 Tory seats. That's as a record number of Conservative MPs are set to stand down.
At least 4 dead, more than a dozen injured after a restaurant collapses on a beach in Majorca.
A court is set to rule whether child killer Lucy Letby can appeal against her convictions.
And in the sport this morning, 17-year-old Luke Littler hits a 9-dart finish as he wins the Premier League of Darts final at the O2. West Ham's Lucas Paquetá is charged by the FA for allegedly getting booked deliberately and affecting the betting market. You know what that means. And where is the Olympic flame today? I hear you ask.
Where is he?
Good morning. It's a bit of a cooler day for most of us today, but how are things shaping up for the bank holiday weekend? Find out all the details with me a little later on.
Where is the Olympic flame today?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because I'll tell you very shortly.
Thank you very much.
Well, that went well.
Rehearsals are for. We should have done one. I'm Stephen Dixon. Good morning.
Good morning, I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Goodness me, he's fallen over on his way out the studio.
You're right,
I haven't.
You okay?
I think it was the unrehearsed tease that I did just now has thrown me, and I've now bumped into a light.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be one of those days.
There you go. Here's the thing for both of you.
Oh, yeah.
Holidays. When we go on holiday, are you one of these people who walks into the supermarket and goes, "Oh, look, they do Kit Kats"?
Yes, that's
exactly.
That's me, yeah.
Well, there's this fella in the Daily Star who is going on an all-inclusive holiday, so he's paid for all his food and the rest of it. It's 1,400 quid it's cost him, and his suitcase is full of food.
Snacks.
So he's taken oat burst, whatever that is.
Right.
Walker's crisps.
Where is he
biscuits,
going, Steve? Where is he going?
Every flavour of pot noodle you could think of. Where is he going?
Because it does kind of depend where you're going. If he's in the middle of the Amazon, then it's understandable that maybe he wants to take some crisps.
He's going to Egypt,
Taking it to Egypt.
Taking a bottle of brown sauce to Egypt, he says.
He's got sausages. As I'm supposed to, he can take meat into places.
Oh, I wouldn't be travelling with sausages.
But anyway, and even shampoo, fair enough. Space raiders, discos, every flavour of pot noodle you can think of.
See, I have been known to pack tea bags. I pack tea bags because you can't get a good cup of tea abroad.
You know what? In America, if you go, they do not understand, even to this day.
I can't make tea.
Do not understand a cup of tea. And you go, why do you want milk with that? And it's like, well, what seems to be the problem? And then it's like, have you got tea bag? What is it? What is it, lemon tea? It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So that's understandable.
It's when they bring it with it, they bring you a teapot with hot water in it and then a tea bag separately.
And you know what? You can't
brew the blooming thing.
You can't buy a kettle in America. Did you know that?
No, they don't.
You cannot
They don't
buy
have
a kettle.
kettles.
I stayed with someone. I said, "I want to make some tea," and they go, "Well, the only kettle they have is one where they put it on the hob and then heat up the water." It's crazy.
They microwave
It's a
their
very
tea.
behind country, I'll have you know.
America backwards.
Yes.
Backwards. Well, you're a bit like this fella who says, I'm only interested in the free beer at the all-inclusive. The food.
What do you mean
doesn't
I'm a
matter
bit
to
like
me.
him?
You'd be like that.
I'm nothing like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, gin, then I might.
Oh, yeah, right. Come on. Right, get out.
I'm off.
We'll
Go
see
on,
you
then.
later.
I've got to go and
Bye,
work.
thank you.
But anyway, it's crazy. What a waste of money.
Well, no, I understand that, actually. Not on to that extent, but do you think pack you a few home comforts?
One or two.
And the tea bags. I think that's a good idea.
Digestives.
Digestives.
That sort of thing.
You know, yeah, and I think it's nice to have a few snacks in a hotel room.
Anyway, if you're like this fella, whose name escapes me, John Phillips, then gbnews.com/yoursay, let us know.
Now, the Prime Minister has launched the opening gambit of this election, accusing his opposite number of lacking the courage to debate him.
Rishi Sunak wants to debate Keir Starmer every single week in the run-up to voting day. And this comes as a survey shows Reform is really threatening 28 Conservative seats across the country.
Well, there's lots to get through. Joining us now is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Good to see you this morning, Olivia. Should we start on the subject of debates? Because Rishi Sunak says he's keen to debate Sir Keir Starmer every week for the next 6 weeks. Is that even feasibly possible with trying to run a campaign at the same time?
Well, every single week does seem very bold when you've got two people who are running up and down the country on campaign trails. I think it's going to be hard to get them in the same place 6 different times over the next 6 weeks. It's a very presidential tactic that the Prime Minister is taking here. He seems to want this election to be about Rishi Sunak versus Keir Starmer rather than the Conservatives versus Labour. Now, that's a tactic that might pay off. Polling shows that Keir Starmer is actually less popular than the Labour Party overall, but Rishi Sunak isn't very much more popular than the Conservative Party overall, so it's not quite clear if it's sensible. It sounds as though the Prime Minister wants to turn these 6 TV debates, if they actually happen, into conversations about immigration and the economy. Now, on the economy, the Prime Minister is on relatively strong ground. Technically, of course, the UK is now out of a recession. Growth went up by 0.6%, and we're seeing a fall in inflation now at 2.3%. And at some point, somewhere down the line, we are expecting interest rates to go down. What's even better for Rishi Sunak is that gas prices are now beginning to go down, and he can point to that as evidence that his economic changes are making a real world effect. On immigration, I'm not sure if the Prime Minister is on quite such solid ground as he seems to think. Yes, you could make an argument that Labour's plan for illegal migration is a bit thin on the bones. Yvette Cooper slightly dodges and evades when she's asked exactly what will happen to migrants who come over here and have their claims, when their claims are being processed, and then what happens when they're rejected or accepted. But of course, Rishi Sunak can't exactly claim a clean sweep on migration either. He promised to stop the boats, and actually the number of small boats has risen on last year, although it's slightly down still on 2022. The Rwanda plan is across the line in Parliament, but of course we haven't actually seen flights take off. And Rishi Sunak has now said we can't expect them to take off before the next general election. There is an argument that what Sunak is trying to do is get the flights all ready to go so that he can say on the 3rd, 2nd of July, if you vote for me on the 5th of July, these flights will be taking off. If you vote for Keir Starmer, then these flights will be grounded and the whole scheme will be scrapped, even though it's all up and raring to go. That's what Sunak is going to try and do in these TV debates. But Keir Starmer is a pretty solid performer at the dispatch box, and I think we can expect him to be pretty confident in debating Sunak.
Yes, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's no way the 6 would happen. It would be unprecedented. But I'm right in thinking, aren't I, that Keir Starmer's agreed to 2, which, frankly, would probably be enough. So it's not like he's shying away from the debates altogether.
No, absolutely not. I mean, this line from Rishi Sunak that Keir Starmer is too scared to debate him, I mean, that doesn't play out at all. Already, Labour have said that Keir Starmer will take part. He's keen to take part in debates. Of course, he'll take part in debates. They say there will be at least 2 TV debates. I'm not sure if there's even an appetite in the country for 6 TV debates. And of course, Keir Starmer has this line, which I think will probably play quite well with the public, that what he wants is for politics to tread more lightly on people's lives. I think after sort of 6 or 7 very political years in Britain, there's quite a big swathe of the public who's ready for politics to tread more lightly on their lives. And of course, 6 TV debates would not come under that heading. So I think Keir Starmer, if he wants to do just maybe 1, 2, 3 TV debates with Rishi Sunak, will have a pretty good case.
OK. Olivia, thanks very much indeed.
Well, let us know what you think about that. How many debates would you like to sit down and watch between Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak? I think you're right. I think 2's probably enough.
Yeah. I was going to say 1. But actually, you probably need to sort of have a rematch, if you like. But I think that's enough.
Yeah, 6 would be
overkill. Sort of make your mind up. Of course, the issue is, and why Keir Starmer will be sort of shying away from them more than the Prime Minister, is it, in effect, he's got more to lose.
Yeah, he's 21 points ahead.
You know, keep your mouth shut and probably just walk into number 10, if the polls are right. So he's got more to lose in that sense, but we shall see. Anyway,
Yes.
Ed Davey hasn't been invited to any of these as yet. I mean, that'll be the next big point of contention, who's invited.
Yes.
Lib Dems will moan if they're not invited. And then, of course, Reform.
Should they be on the stage?
Yeah, should they be there? And then, of course, well, then you get the... We've seen it in the past, and you get the Greens and you get the SNP and everyone. But, of course, then it turns into one of these huge things where you don't get any proper answers. Or do you just debate between the 2 men who could be Prime Minister, in effect?
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think. gbnews.com/you'll say.
We're going to be talking to the Lib Dems local government spokeswoman, Helen Morgan. That's in the next hour, so we're getting all perspectives on this. But in the meantime, let's talk to local government editor from Conservative Home, Harry Phibbs. Morning to you, Harry. Has this been a strong start for the Prime Minister?
Yes, I think it has. I actually think it is quite bold and gutsy of him to, well, obviously to call the election earlier than most people, certainly earlier than I was expecting. But also, I think, challenging Keir Starmer, saying, you know, he wants lots of debates. He's up for the fight. That although he's accepts he's the underdog, he hasn't given up. I do think that whether it's through debates or otherwise, that the focus probably on this election will be on Labour, because people, understandably, the media scrutinised the government for years. What's the government doing about this? What's the government doing about that? And it's only really in a general election that it becomes not whether you like the government or not, but the choice. And I think that therefore, when Keir Starmer is put under scrutiny, then we could well see the polls narrow. An example: the Times this morning, leading with a story about energy bills and net zero, and the threat of increased energy bills from Labour with their very alarmist climate change policies of saying, oh, the planet's coming to an end, and so we need to push up energy bills, which has very much been the message from Ed Miliband, certainly. So I think that's the type of issue Labour will probably find themselves pressed on over the next 6 weeks.
Well, we are going to be talking to Claire Coutinho from the government on exactly that a little bit later on in the programme. But, Harry, I wanted to ask you about the role of Reform in all of this, because we are seeing them very quickly become the 3rd biggest party in this country. And there's new YouGov data out today that suggests that Reform could threaten 28 Tory seats.
Yes, I think there are a lot of people who are Conservatives who probably still think of themselves as Conservative, who are dismayed by various policies that the government's been putting forward. And in a way, I think it doesn't really matter if they abstain because they're angry, or they make a protest by voting for Reform UK. Those are votes where they're not going to go to Labour. But of course, if you get millions of Conservatives staying at home, then you get a Labour landslide by default. So that really is Reform UK will say, oh, the Labour Conservative are exactly the same or whatever. I think that the Conservatives will probably be saying, no, look, there is a difference, and the Labour government would be completely at odds with what Reform UK voters would like to see. So I think it'll be, who you're voting against will probably be the pitch, rather than who you're voting for. If you're trying to sort of win over some of these disillusioned Conservatives.
Harry, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. It's worth pointing out we were hoping to speak to someone representing the Labour Party just then, but we had the lines dropped out. It's technology for you, but we're getting lots of views from the Labour Party throughout the course of the programme, of course, this morning.
Well, let's get the thoughts now of Reform UK Deputy Leader Ben Habib. Good to see you this morning, Ben. And I'm sure you're very pleased with that new YouGov data out this morning that Reform could threaten 28 Tory seats.
Well, we intend to threaten them right across the country in every seat they hold. And, Harry's right. The way the Conservative Party will wish to spin this whole election is, who do you want to vote against? But if you want to change the country for the better, if you want to change in direction in the way the country is governed, you've got to decide who you wish to vote for, not who you wish to vote against. And actually, the only change on offer on the ticket is from Reform UK. If you look at Conservative Party policy, the way it's played out, their high taxation, big borrowing, big state intervention, high immigration, net zero, and Labour are that plus a bit more, all in the same direction. Whereas Reform UK stands 180 degrees against virtually every single thing I just said. So, if people want to change in the way the country's governed, they've got to vote for it. And that's the challenge we're going to have, is getting people out who would otherwise be disillusioned with politics, disillusioned with small c conservatism, because even though they want it, no party's prepared to offer it. We need to get them off their sofas into the polling booths on the 4th of July, voting for Reform UK.
Yeah, the problem you've got, though, in trying to... You've got people who are supporting you, right, who are frustrated, and that's understandable, but you've got to win people over. And the problem you've got is, apart from being a sort of protest party, if you like, people are going to say, well, what are Reform going to do about the NHS? What are Reform going to do about education? What are Reform going to do about social care? All these issues. What are Reform going to do about, maintaining our roads and our highways? And it's all these issues that until we see a manifesto, and unless you've actually laid all that out in fine detail, again, people aren't going to really know what they're voting for.
Well, actually, we have laid it out in fine detail. If you go to our website, we've got a contract with the people which sets all of this out. And it's all funded, by the way, by two very significant changes that we would make in government policy, both of which the Labour Party and Conservative Party are not prepared to make. The first is the ditching of net zero, which by the Treasury's own estimate is costing £50 billion per annum, roughly, and the removal of the free right of passage that commercial banks are being given as a result of getting interest on the money that was created for them when they sold their debt to the Bank of England, which is costing the country about 30 or 40 billion pounds a year. Just by ditching net zero and removing this free interest that the banks get, we would save 80 to 100 billion pounds per annum, which would give us the ability to roll out all our other policies, including those associated with the NHS, for which, by the way, we have some very novel ideas, again, none of which are being put forward by the opposition parties, by the main parties.
Look, want to ask you about Nigel Farage. We've only got a minute left with you. He has decided not to stand as a candidate, but telling Tom Harwood on his show last night that he was actually planning to launch a campaign to become an MP next week, and that is why he says the Tories have decided to go early on this general election.
Well, I mean, that's Nigel's interpretation of it. The reality is that Rishi Sunak realised this was probably, even though this looks like a low point from most people's normal standpoint, this was probably a high point for Rishi Sunak. Inflation had come down, the economy wasn't shrinking. He can duck the question about whether flights for Rwanda are going to take off or not because the election is coming before his own self-imposed 10 to 12-week timeframe expires. And Reform UK was getting stronger every single day that he delayed the election. So I'm not sure how much Nigel Farage played in the Prime Minister's mind. I think there were a whole host of other reasons which moved him to call an election now. And I think from Rishi's perspective, it was probably a good move.
Are you saying then you don't believe Nigel? I mean, because the idea that he's got. Hold on a minute. The idea that he's got a general election campaign ready to roll next week, and he was planning to do it, and because of this announcement, he's shelved the whole thing. It's a bit unusual.
Well, I'm deputy leader of Reform UK, as you mentioned, and I was entirely unaware of his plans to launch a campaign next week.
OK. Well, I think that says all we need to know. I think, Ben Habib, good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Well...
very interesting.
That is interesting. Let's get Nigel on the blower.
I'd like to talk to Nigel because, as you will know, he's decided not to stand as a candidate. But in that letter yesterday, which we had in front of us, he said that he wanted to focus on the US election. Is the US election more important than the UK one?
Well, I would say no, not to us.
Well, I would say no, not to us. But it would be interesting to ask Nigel that.
No, it would.
So, Nigel, if you're listening this morning, let's have a chat.
But I am also intrigued that, as Ben Habib said, I am the deputy leader of Reform UK, and I had no idea Nigel was planning to launch an election campaign next week. Last night, Nigel was saying, I was fully geared up, ready to go.
And that's why the Tories went early.
Yeah.
That's Nigel's version of events, according to Ben Habib. So let us know what you think about that. gbnews.com/yoursay.
Right, 6:20. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom this morning.
And emergency services have reported at least 4 people have been killed and 16 have been injured after a building collapsed on a beach in Majorca. The building gave way at 8:30 p.m. local time on Thursday. Reports indicate the first floor collapsed into the ground floor, trapping diners. No British casualties have been reported so far.
Former Post Office boss Paula Venables has denied that the company's executive team, which she led, shielded the board from dirty laundry. That's as she also denied trying to close down a review into the software which led to the wrongful convictions of hundreds of sub-postmasters. She'll appear in front of the inquiry for a final time later on today.
Abortions have risen by a record 17% in 1 year in England and Wales, following the introduction of the pills by post system. That's the highest number of abortions since the 1967 Abortion Act and the largest single-year increase in more than 50 years. Abortion providers are expecting the increases to continue. Right, at 21 minutes past 6, let's take a look at the weather now, shall we, with Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you're exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine. Highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's time for our biggest cash giveaway so far. A massive £20,000 in cash has to be won. And if you've ever wondered what it's like to win a GB News giveaway, we caught up with Phil Cox, who was our very first Great British Giveaway winner. This is what he had to say about winning big.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I'm from Leeds and I won the Great British Giveaway. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. It only took me two seconds just to text. I'd say, why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. Yeah, I mean, you hear about people winning things all the time, but you don't actually know anyone that wins them. So I sometimes think, oh, I'll never be me, or wonder if it's, you know, just a setup. But it is actually 100% genuine. But obviously, whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was. And they're going to get even more money this time round. So why wouldn't you go in the draw? And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
Well, that's it. Do you want to be our next winner with a whopping £20,000 in tax-free cash? Well, if you do, here's how.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. And now do stay with us because Paul Coit is going to be here next, talking us through all the sport.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News, weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Right, let's have a look at all the sport. Paul Coit is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Lucas Paquetá is a name I'm not familiar with, but I'm going to have to learn.
Right, he's a Brazilian player, signed for West Ham. Very good footballer, and Manchester City were very interested in signing him as well. But there was one problem that was getting in the way of Manchester City signing him, and that is this charge that was looming over some yellow cards that looked dubious.
Oh.
Right.
Now, when I say dubious, the thing is, I'm going to use the words, he's been charged by the FA for allegedly getting booked deliberately for the improper purpose of affecting the betting market. Now, do you follow me?
Yeah.
So what is being alleged is that there's 3 yellow cards that were given that look like he was doing it on purpose to get a yellow card, which then, this is what happened, because you could have spread betting, there's different betting around the world. I could say, I think that Lucas Paquetá is going to get booked between the 55th and 60th minute, and so obviously the odds are going to be quite high. Now, these are basically the what's alleged is the fact that he knows this, and is that people have been betting on when or how he gets a yellow card. Now, we've had betting problems in the past. Now, Ivan Toney, of course, he was banned for 9 months. Sandro Tonali at Newcastle, we spoke about him as well, and it seemed that he was someone that had a betting problem, and he was banned from worldwide football, and then the FA decided that they would just have a suspended sentence because they realised what he was going through. But those offences seem to be more a case of them betting themselves on games, but nothing that they would affect. Now, with this one, if this is proved to be the case, that Paquetá, if he was doing this during a game and affecting the game, and it was him that was doing it, then who knows how long the ban is?
Because it's effectively match fixing, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly what it is. And so that is not a situation where I think you could actually ban someone for a year. Surely this, if he's found guilty and he has actually done it on purpose, that's a life ban from football. You can't expect someone to come back in and play sport when they're affecting what's going on. It's like if you score an own goal and say, well, I imagine this is going to happen. There's been moments back in the day when I've spoken to old footballers where they've said, look, everybody bet on this because we're certain we're going to win. But obviously that's you trying to win a game of football. Still doesn't make it right because you're not allowed to bet if you're a footballer. But when it comes to a situation that you're affecting things and people are making money out of something you've done and done it on purpose, then there's a huge, huge problem. So, we'll see.
Yep, watch this space. Should we talk about our favourite phrase at the moment, which is, of course, the managerial merry-go-round?
Yes.
People jumping on, people jumping off.
Continues to spin, Ellie.
Continues to spin.
It's spinning, in fact, at an eye-watering speed.
Yes.
Julian Lopetegui is now the West Ham manager, so it looks like he's going to have to deal without a Brazilian playing for him, the way things are going. Left Wolves in August, former Spain and Madrid coach, Real Madrid coach, so he's won the Europa League with Sevilla, so he's in at West Ham. But the thing is, the other name that we've mentioned is Kieran McKenna. Now, can you remember Kieran McKenna, Ipswich manager?
Oh, yes.
So he was at Manchester United and then as an assistant, because you mentioned him, and then he's done really well at Ipswich, taking them up to the Premier League. So now he's young, he's progressive, and everybody's thinking, well, we want him. So now it looks like he's got the choice. It's like whether he wants to go to Chelsea, whether he wants to go to Brighton, they're the main two, and possibly Manchester United. So at the moment, he's got some big decisions to make, but he's going to have a lot of cash thrown in front of him.
What about Wayne Rooney?
See, Wayne Rooney, he would love to be in that position, I imagine, but he hasn't done quite so well as a manager. It just hasn't worked out for him. Birmingham, when he came in.
Yeah, then Derby.
Yeah, it was Derby first, then he went to America and Washington, D.C. That didn't work out. Then Birmingham, he came over when they were 6th in the league, and took them down to 20th. So it's not really going so well. So now it's trying to find a level, and now Plymouth are interested in Wayne Rooney. Plymouth Argyle. And this could be...
Well, hot shots.
Well, you know what? Plymouth are in the Championship. Don't knock Plymouth. You know, I can see what you're doing.
No, but the interesting thing is, because, I mean, what would Plymouth Argyle pay him?
Well,
I mean...
This is what's worrying, because
compared to what he was on.
Some clubs will try and break the bank to bring a big name in like that, but surely they're not going to pay him that much because they can't. And also, how successful will he be? Will he actually do anything for the club? This will be, if he gets this job and it doesn't work out, that's going to be the end. Unless he goes to Saudi Arabia or something, because he's not going to be reaching those heights when you're looking at people like Kieran McKenna. But also with Kieran McKenna, you know, he's got to make this work. So he's got to choose very carefully, because the managerial merry-go-round, people can fall off that merry-go-round very quickly as soon as they can get back on.
Should we talk Luke Littler? Luke Littler?
A bit of Luke, 17 years old, won the Premier League of Darts yesterday, won the final. This kid is unbelievable.
Over Luke Humphries.
Over Luke Humphries.
I mean, getting his revenge.
That's exactly right, because it was Luke Humphries that won the World Championship. So he's won himself, I think, 240 grand from this, and not only that, 9-dart finish as well, the ultimate 9-dart finish. So brilliant for Luke Littler.
I mean, he really is a full-on talent, isn't he?
Oh, he really
17. That's a long way to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, we still doubted that, didn't we, in the World Championship? The he was 16 at the time. I still think he's 38. I do. I'm sorry.
No, don't be mean.
I do think he's 38.
He's got a baby face.
He's a... Do you think so?
Yeah, I think I do think he looks quite young.
That's a...
Should we...
I'm only 23.
You had a hard paper round.
I bet I'll put a very hard paper round. Right, shall we do... I mean, this is just a warm-up. This is just a warm-up. Forget everything else. Ask me the question. Ask me the question.
Where is the Olympic torch today, Paul?
Thanks, Ellie, for showing such enthusiasm.
I know.
Yes. Listen, we've got to... If you're getting tired now, you wait. We've got until the end of July.
Got a long way to go on this.
I will tell you where the Olympic flame is. Let's see the torch. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Does that look familiar?
No.
It's passing through the renowned vineyards of the Bordeaux region in southwest France.
Oh, it does look pretty.
On a horse as well.
Wow.
900 million bottles.
Oh, they're running with it now.
Produced.
It's going to take forever at this speed.
I know. Well, they're going everywhere.
There's the...
Oh, look, there we are. I don't know who she is there, but anyway, the opening ceremony, July the 26th. Do you hear that? 900 million bottles of wine produced annually in the Bordeaux region. So not only do I show you where the torch is, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the region as well.
I'd like to know who those people were wearing red with little hats.
Well, they looked very Catholic.
They look very Catholic.
They look like cardinals.
Oh, there's the ring going. Well, he lit that. That's the last fella.
This is what worries me, this bit, because they're getting very close to the flame.
Yeah.
Someone is going to set fire to themselves, and that is not going to be a good thing. So they're going to be very, very careful. I don't know whether they're warned about that or whether it's the camera angle, but there we are. So they light the ring, and then off they go, and they're off to the Charente region next.
Charente?
Yes.
I've not heard of Charente.
Probably because I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Oh, right.
But I'm either Charite or I'm Charente. But anyway, that's where they're going today.
Very good.
With that.
Gosh, you should be a stand-up, you know.
You know what? I love the flame. Do you get the idea that I love the flame?
Yeah, I do.
I love the flame.
It's just because it looks like a massive cigar.
The Olympics is going to be such a letdown for me once the actual torch bearing is finished.
Right, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Has it really?
Oh, no. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Thank you very much. Do stay with us. We're going to be joined by real-life husband and wife, that's what I'm trying to say, Nigel Nelson and Claire Pearsall, which is always fun, isn't it? That's next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A720 Edinburgh City bypass, it's down to a single lane eastbound between the Gilmerton Junction and the A7 at the Sheriff Hall roundabout because of flooding. On the M5 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed for emergency repairs on the southbound exit at Junction 3 at Hales Owen. In London, on the A1 Aylmer Road, it's down to a single lane southbound at North Hill in Highgate after an accident. On the M4 in Berkshire, there's a lane closed where someone's broken down on the westbound entry slip road at Junction 12 at Reading. In Surrey, on the A3. It's down to a single lane northbound, but overnight roadworks have overrun between Esher and Hook. There are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to the FDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk after a technical problem. And in Cornwall, the A39 is closed each way between Roach and the Treckenning roundabout after an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Let's have a look at some of the newspapers for you at 6:38.
And The Guardian leads with the Prime Minister starting his election campaign by abandoning flagship policies such as deporting migrants to Rwanda and banning smoking. That's according to The Guardian.
Yes, I don't think he's banning sending people to Rwanda. I think that's
They're not going to take off before the general election, is what's confirmed. Yes.
Anyway,
if he becomes PM, they will be taking off.
Yes. Anyway, that's just to clarify on that one. The Mirror has the election campaign getting off to a bad start, they reckon, after visiting a brewery in Wales.
The Express leads with the Prime Minister attacking Sir Keir Starmer for not having the courage to face him in a series of TV election debates.
The Times has energy bills falling in the first big election battle. What has got to... This is where I get confused, because what's it got to do with politics that Ofgem are bringing down the price cap? I don't know. Let's get some clarity from our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and former government advisor, Claire Pearsall. Morning to you both.
Good morning.
Can the government I mean, is that a big election thing, that Ofgem's, the price cap's coming down?
Yeah, because the government will have a massive part in ensuring that it happens and also lobbying them to bring it down even lower. So whoever is in power is going to look to exert the pressure over things like Ofgem in order to bring that price cap into a more affordable territory. So it's always one of those big election winners for people. They can't take all the credit for it, but they will do because it's an election campaign.
Yeah, well, that's a nice spin on it.
Oh,
I mean, the trouble with oil prices is that it's got nothing to do with the government. Oil prices is a global issue. Oil prices are coming down. It depends on OPEC supplying extra barrels of oil. That will bring the price down, or cutting them back, which puts it up. We've had the war in Ukraine. The Middle East may yet cause us more problems in the future. But the government doesn't actually... It's a bit like inflation. The government always takes credit for inflation going down, but not when it goes up and blames the Bank of England. So in this case, of course, it's good news. It's just not particularly electoral news.
But of course it is, because it's going to affect people and everybody in the country wants their bills to be a lot cheaper. And yes, there is the price of oil, that is on an international scale, but the energy companies themselves also add on a whopping great percentage. So that is something that both political parties can work for, and the government does work for quite hard.
Yeah, but you can't claim credit for your lot for this happening. That's the point I'm making.
But then your lot are just going to make bills more expensive.
Not if we get the wind power, and we're not.
I mean, you two laugh about it as you do, because you're I was going to say a bickering couple. That's not fair. That's not fair. You argue things very sensibly between you two.
Yeah.
But that's a real concern. I mean, I've heard it from a lot of people, Nigel, saying, well, I'm a bit worried about Labour. A tax is going to go up, a bill's going to go up. I mean, that needs to be addressed if he's going to win people over.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly need more detail on it. I mean, at the moment that he's got the plan, Keir Starmer's got the plan for Great British Energy. Now, all being well, that will double onshore wind, triple solar, and quadruple offshore wind. Result of that is annual bills should come down by £1,400 a year. You should be able to create 500,000 jobs. That is what the economic growth policy is based on, because the world is moving towards green technology. If we can lead the way, British business could get £1 trillion of extra business on the back of it.
Claire, let's take a look at The Guardian, shall we? And this is all about Parliament now running out of time to pass policies.
Yeah, this is the unfortunate side of when an election is called, that legislation that is left halfway through, we go into something called wash-up, which just before dissolution, any bills that are left over that are far enough advanced can pretty much go through sort of relatively quickly. Now, both sides have to come to an agreement. A lot of anything that is controversial tends to be stripped out of it. And there has to be agreement between the two major parties as to whether this legislation is going to go through. So they tend to look at the most advanced legislation, pretty much the simplest legislation, nothing controversial. And unfortunately, it means a lot of pieces of really good work are now lost. And one of those, which I know you've probably spoken about, football governance, which Tracy Crouch, the MP, current MP for Chatham and Aylesford, has been leading on. And unfortunately, this is now not going to happen. This would have put in a regulator for the English Football League, would have been a great benefit, especially to grassroots campaigns. And that's just going to go by the wayside. So much work has gone into it. So it's a really unfortunate part of the electoral process. And there are some really important things. Renters reform is another one. No fault evictions is going. So it is a real shame. I hope whoever takes over as the next government will look quite seriously at things like renters reform, because I think that's really important and would be massive benefit.
But, I mean, The Guardian's saying, the Rwanda issue. Why are they playing on that line?
Yeah, that isn't entirely true, because that legislation has already been passed.
Through, yeah.
What has been confirmed by Rishi Sunak, I think it was yesterday, that there would be no flights taking off before the general election. And typically, the flights would only take off should he be returned as Prime Minister, which is, an electioneering promise in itself. So, no, The Guardian doesn't have that right. That legislation is already passed. That is already there. And according to the Home Office, plans are already progressed to ensure that people are placed on a plane to take off. It just isn't going to happen before the 4th of July.
It would be repealed by Labour should they win the election. So, in the event that we don't get a plane off to Rwanda before the election, and Labour win, then it's never going to happen. And we've wasted around about £310 million, I think, on this. We've already given that to Rwanda.
What do you think about the cigarette ban for all people born after 2008? I think it's the end of 2008, so 2009. Do you think that will become a manifesto pledge for the Tories? Because that's been talked about a lot, hasn't it? To abandon that entirely seems quite strange.
It's quite funny, because it's one of those policies that splits the Conservative Party right down the middle. There are those who find it profoundly unconservative, of which I'm in that group. I don't think you should go around banning people. I think we all know that smoking is bad for your health, but people have to take personal responsibility. There have to be choices made. And there are those who wish for it to be banned. So is it going to appear in the manifesto? I don't know. Surprisingly, they've not called me up and asked for my opinions on what should be in the manifesto.
They will.
You think? But it's quite interesting that Rishi Sunak was so keen on this. He really wanted this to be one of his legacy pieces, and it's completely gone by the wayside.
And it might turn up into the Labour manifesto.
Yeah.
Labour are much more keen on this than the Tories.
Do you like banning things?
Well, yes, Labour do have a history of banning things. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, Yes. All right, let's have a look at immigration numbers, Nigel. The Express, quoting Migration Watch, who say immigration's got to fall more steeply.
Yes, well, it probably will, in fact, because a lot of the things that the government were doing won't click in until the beginning of this year. So, for instance, where the fall has happened now, that's 100,000 Ukrainians and Hong Kongers who are no longer coming here. So that's the humanitarian route. The next stage will be students. I think this is a contentious one because it was this government that encouraged students to come here because we wanted to fund our universities. So the plan was 600,000 students by 2030. We're encouraging them by giving them work visas for a couple of years after they finished, after they graduated, allowing dependents to come in. We've cancelled all that. As a result, it looks as if tuition fees would have to start then going up. You've also got 4 in 10 of the migrants on work visas are from India, Nigeria, but they're for the NHS and our care sector. So if you stop them coming, we have more problems again with staff in hospitals and care homes.
But we need to be we do need to be recruiting more homegrown talent.
Let's do that. No, that's fine. I mean, if the Tories had got their act together and done just that, you wouldn't have needed these people to come in and fill the gaps. And that comes down ultimately to pay. Do we want to pay more for our care sector, pay more for the NHS?
Well, that's going to be a popular policy, though, isn't it? Because we had West Streeton talking about that the other day, the homegrown talent thing, saying that A-level students who have got all A's are being rejected from medical school places in favour of international students because they are obviously paying more to go to universities. And that shouldn't be the case. I'm sure many people can agree with that, that teenagers who are succeeding at school and getting all A's should be able to go to medical school if they want to.
Absolutely, and I don't think there is anything wrong with wanting homegrown talent to come through and work within the NHS. I think that we would all want to see that, and kids that are working extremely hard at GCSEs and A-levels to find that they're not good enough when they have got a bunch of really good results, I find astonishing that these universities will choose, and unfortunately, will then go and choose the people that pay more, and that shouldn't be how it works. A little bit lower down the scale in healthcare, you've got a real problem with recruiting and retention of staff, so I can understand why we have been so reliant upon staff coming from overseas, but it shouldn't be the case that universities aren't allowing our own children to go through. If they've worked extremely hard, they're incredibly talented, they should be able to get those places.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I don't know how the system needs to be reformed, really. But I went to the last graduation I had, which was in 2016, 2017, and I think I was the only English person there.
Really?
I was getting a doctorate, and everybody else was essentially Chinese.
Really?
In the entire graduation class. Yeah.
But I think also that's got a lot to do with, do people want to go and study? That takes an awful lot of dedication to go and study for a PhD. It takes a lot of money, and some people don't have the funds to be able to do that and support themselves. So I can sort of understand it. I think that we need to look at funding for further education and higher education in this country. I don't think that we've got it right. I don't think it should be open to all. The Tony Blair, everybody should go to university thing didn't work and has caused an awful lot of this problem. But also, I think, equally, the Conservative Party and fees, that also needs to be addressed now. We need to be able to look at how best we support our students.
But the mistake was obviously relying on foreign students to keep universities going. And as I say, you'll end up with a problem with...
Sorry, though, was that not a Conservative issue?
Yes.
In that Conservatives transformed all the polys to universities?
Yes, but unfortunately it did start under Tony Blair with this whole everybody should have the opportunity to go. So a lot of polytechnics, old polytechnics, took the view that they could become universities, so therefore they would get funding, they would get people coming in. But yes, essentially that was down to the Conservative Party allowing that to happen and opening up to foreign students.
I mean, the issue is now that if you were to limit international students, you are, of course, then passing on those fees to our homegrown
That's right.
talent.
I mean, at the moment...
and they'll shoot up.
Yeah, at the moment, the tuition cap is just below £10,000. If you can't fund it through foreign students, 4 in 10 students come from abroad.
Wow.
So if you couldn't fund it, the domestic students would end up having to pay more.
Well, unless you shut down a load of universities.
Well, that's the other...
And discourage as many people from going and work on apprenticeships.
I think apprenticeships are really the way forward. I
apprenticeships are a
think
good way
they are
forward.
so overlooked and they often produce so many better results. People going into the workplace with actual skills, talent and work experience, and they want to do it. How many people do we see going through university, spending 3 or 4 years having a great time, coming out with a degree
and debt,
but it doesn't lead them into a career and they don't entirely know what they want to do.
And there's so many of these
reverses with apprenticeships. I think we should be pushing those a lot more.
And there's so many of these Mickey Mouse degrees now, aren't there? Maybe we need to be looking at those.
2 important matters in the Sun, Nigel. I'm torn on this one because it's about how much head on your pint.
Yeah, well, apparently 8 out of 10 pubs are not serving it properly. So...
Oh, yeah, according to who? The drinkers?
No, this is actually according to the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, who should know what they're talking about. They go around measuring the heads on your pint. Now, apparently, it's costing up to £114 a year for boozers. What it doesn't say is quite how much drink you've got to take to get to that £114.
Yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah, well, I would have thought so. But 8 out of 10 pints are not full up. There's the same problem with wine, and the argument is you should insist at the bar. Right? Could you just top up that pint?
It's hard though because like we see when I worked down the boozer, and you had Tony who owned the pub, and Bill, his dad, who sort of managed it. Now, Bill would always say, "Oh, there's too much head on that. Too much head on that. Put a bit more beer in it." Tony would say, "There's not enough head on that."
Yeah, I mean, this is
well, a sort of can't-win situation.
You could not win. Depends who was behind the bar with you at the time.
But it's also really difficult as a customer because you know that it's not the fault of the person really behind the bar. They probably are working to the same rules as you were when you were pulling pints. And it is quite difficult. But as we've seen recently, it's all right because the politicians are going to be in pubs pulling pints.
Oh, aren't they just?
That'll be the next thing. Every election campaign, there's always a photograph of a politician in a pub pulling a very bad pint.
To be fair, a decent pint glass has got a pint line on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So so long as you bring it up to the pint line, then you can have as much.
But you have to be if you're the customer, you have to insist.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Never normally backwards them coming forwards, are they? Somebody there waiting for their pints.
Well, especially not a regular.
Yeah.
If you're down your local, then it's gonna be right, isn't it? It's gonna be how you want.
Yeah, if you know the people there, then it'll be fine. It's going into a pub you've never been into before and trying to insist. You know the sort of reaction you can get when you try and insist on a full pint.
Yeah, to get the silence that comes across the bar and everybody looks at you. Yeah, it'll be one of those moments.
Love it. That was absolutely brilliant. Love that. It takes me back. I used to love working behind the bar.
It's
absolutely
great fun.
Love it.
I think you learn a lot, so I really think everybody needs to be able to do that because you do learn a lot about sort of just individual behaviour.
Yeah, I spilt more beer than I served. When
You did.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Nigel,
great, thank
Claire,
you.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you both. Let's take a look at the weather now, shall we, with Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you are exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine. Highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A720 Edinburgh City bypass, it's down to just one lane eastbound from the Ilmerton Junction to the A7 at the Sheriff Hall roundabout because of flooding. In Derbyshire, the A50 is blocked westbound where a lorry caught fire between the A38 at Toyota Island and Hilton. Trains aren't stopping at Wolverhampton Station because of a signalling problem. On the M5 in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed for emergency repairs on the southbound exit at Junction 3 at Hales Owen. In Cambridgeshire, the A14 is closed westbound where overnight roadworks have overrun between junctions 24B and 21 from Swavesey to the A1 near Huntingdon. There are queues from junction 25 at Bar Hill, and there are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk after a technical problem earlier on. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 24th of May. Today, the Prime Minister claims his Labour counterpart doesn't have the courage to debate him, as he has no plans for the country.
Yes, Rishi Sunak has challenged Keir Starmer to not one, but 6 TV debates over the course of the election. Will this strategy pay off? Find out more with me very soon.
A new poll reveals that reform could pose a threat to 28 Tory seats. That's as a record number of Conservative MPs are set to stand down.
Nigel Farage says the Tories called a summer election over fears that he would stand as an MP.
I had, to be honest with you, put in place some preparations to launch next week.
At least 4 people are dead and more than a dozen have been injured after a restaurant building collapses on a beach in Majorca.
A 2-storey building on the beachfront with a terrace reportedly collapsing into the basement, with emergency services working through the night to recover its victims.
A court is set to rule on whether child killer Lucy Letby can appeal against her convictions.
And a huge weekend of sport ahead with us. The FA Cup final, the Scottish Cup final, the Rugby Champions Cup final, the Monaco Grand Prix, England versus Pakistan in the cricket, the French Tennis Open, the Women's Champions League final. Our friend Jack Catterall fights Josh Taylor, and the richest game in football, the Championship playoff between Southampton and Leeds. And if you like cycling, don't forget the Giro d'Italia.
Good morning. It's a bit of a cooler day for most of us today, but how are things shaping up for the bank holiday weekend? Find out all the details with me a little later on.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Lots on pint glasses this morning. I'm glad you're emailing in on pint glasses.
I knew you'd get them going on that.
Because it's better than talking about politics and all the views as well, quite frankly. Andy Linton says pint glasses with a line on were created for use with the automated half-pint dispensers. I've never seen an automated half-pint dispensers. Most branded glasses are a pint to the brim. Oh, well, that's no good, because you do want a head on your pint, especially with an ale. You've got a decent head on it. It's quite nice. It adds to the experience, sipping through the froth.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I can't really relate because I'm not a pint drinker.
Give over. I can imagine you with a pint of stout in front of you.
No. I did have a Guinness once.
Right.
If that counts.
Yes.
In the Guinness storehouse in Dublin, and it was quite nice, actually. It took me about 2 hours to drink it. Quite heavy.
Oh. Well, it's heavy.
It's like a meal.
I like this one. Darren Johnson, hi Darren, says, when I got a big head on a pint, I'd always say to the bar staff, are the vicars in? Because I've found his collar.
Oh,
very good.
Very good.
I'm liking that one.
Jason Gale says the Dutch just scoop the top off the pint and then there's no arguments.
Yeah.
Is that when you knife it off? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but you've still got a good head underneath. The brim of the glass.
Okay.
Anyway, it's I can see we'll be going down the boozer after this, and we'll.
Oh, we will. This is what happens. We talk about fish and chips or having a drink on the breakfast show, and I just have to go home and have fish and chips or have a drink. That's what happens on this channel.
So we know what she's going to be like by lunchtime.
Yes.
All right, let's crack on with the politics then. And the Prime Minister has launched the opening gambit of his election, or this election, accusing his opposite number of lacking the courage to debate him.
Rishi Sunak wants to debate Sir Keir Starmer every week in the run-up to voting day. This comes as a survey shows that the Reform UK party are threatening 28 Conservative seats across the country.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, who's in Westminster for us this morning. It's an interesting line from number 10 about the debates, Olivia, isn't it? Because, I mean, they're clearly trying to put Keir Starmer on the back foot.
Definitely. Whether it will be sort of practically possible to have a debate every single week of the election campaign remains to be seen. Obviously, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition will be up and down the country, running around the place. Getting them in the same place at the same time will be quite hard. It's an interesting message, though, that Rishi Sunak is giving here. He wants to make this election presidential. He wants it to be about Rishi Sunak versus Keir Starmer rather than about the Conservative versus Labour. Now, you can see the logic in that. Obviously, the Conservatives are about 20 points behind in the polls, and no party has ever made up a 20-point poll gap in the history of British elections. But Keir Starmer is actually slightly less popular than the Labour Party overall. So if he can make it about Starmer the man rather than Labour the party, he thinks he has a better chance of success. That said, Sunak himself has incredibly low popularity ratings. Yes, he was popular during the COVID period, and he was tried to sort of hark back to that in that disastrous speech he did in Downing Street in the rain. But these days, his popularity is lower than Boris Johnson's ever was, for example. A little bit higher than Liz Truss, but lower than Johnson, Cameron, Callaghan, Thatcher, even right at the end of her time in office. So the idea that he is on safer territory fighting Starmer on a personal level might be something that he comes to regret. As for the content of these election debates, it sounds as though Rishi Sunak wants to make it all about the economy and immigration. On the economy, he's on sort of middling ground. Yes, he can say that inflation has fallen. It's now 2.3%, down from 11% in October 2022. But growth, something else which he promised to get going in that now sort of infamous 5 pledges speech last January, growth isn't very impressive at all, actually. GDP per capita, which is what most economists use to show a country's level of growth, is stagnating and is actually in some cases falling, although the country is technically no longer in recession. So it's not the strongest ground with which to be fighting Keir Starmer. As for immigration, yes, there's an argument that Labour's plan for solving illegal migration is a little bit thin on the bones. Yvette Cooper sometimes sounds like she's dodging and evading questions when it comes to what would happen to migrants who come over here illegally under a Labour government. But of course, Rishi Sunak can hardly say that he's stopped the boats. In fact, boat numbers are up. So that's what he's going to try and make this election, these debates about. But I think Keir Starmer might be only too willing to go to the fight.
OK, Olivia, thank you.
Well, let's speak to former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, who joins us in the studio now. Good to see you, David. Were you caught off guard? Were you surprised by the 4th of July election announcement?
Nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing surprises me anymore because I just feel there's desperation in the air. You know, it's like watching some poor animal being steadily trapped and driven into an impossible situation. I mean, what is Sunak doing, getting on his knees and begging to have debates against the leader of the opposition? That's not what prime ministers are supposed to do. Look, I like Sunak. I think he's a very gifted man. I think he's a nice man. But something sums up where the Tory party are at the moment, and it was him getting soaked. No one thought to give him an umbrella.
Well, he's spoken about that. Have you heard what he had to say? He said he believes...
Do I need this information?
I think it's very interesting, because a lot of people are saying, look, he should have had a brolly, and they're poking fun at him. He said, I believe in the great British tradition of going out and standing on the steps of Downing Street and making an announcement, come wind or shine or rain or whatever the weather's doing that day.
Most people do have an umbrella. I just think he looked ridiculous.
Yeah, I have to say, that didn't bother me. I just thought he was getting on with it. But in terms of where we are, is this a walk in the park for the Labour Party?
No. No. This is the words of comfort I bring from beyond the grave, because I lost my seat in 1997. And the Tories actually were in a very good position then, but because the economy was doing well and so on. But there was something about Tony Blair. He just seemed unbeatable. And what do you know? He was unbeatable. I mean, Starmer's nothing like Tony Blair.
There's no excitement and enthusiasm, is there? Especially not like it was in 1997.
You know, he's a sort of greasy-haired lawyer, you know. I know about greasy-haired lawyers. I was one myself. Yeah. And, you know, once a greasy-haired lawyer, always a greasy-haired lawyer. You never entirely shake it off. But I think the problem, though, for the Tories is Sunak there's no showbiz there. He needs to be able to go out and command the situation. But I think if he'd asked me, and by the way, he didn't, but if he'd asked me what should I do, I'd have said just get it over with. Shock them. Do something they think you're scared of an election. Well, show to them that you're not. And it can't be any worse. And, of course, it could be quite different. You see, there's a lot of loose cannons on the Labour front bench. And Starmer is unexciting. You know, the trouble with Starmer, he's a bit like every lawyer that I've ever met. They argue one case, but if you'd ask them to argue the opposite case, they do so, provided the money was right. And I tell you, I don't think that Starmer carries very little in the way of conviction. And he's, the problem for Starmer is that he doesn't excite people. See, Tony Blair excited people, you know?
Well, he did. He did. Boris Johnson excited people, to be fair.
Let's keep this a clean conversation.
Well, no, but he did. He did. But shouldn't this election be about policy and not about personality?
Yeah, that's what we all say. But, of course, the answer is you cannot get rid of personality. And if you do get rid of personality out of politics, all you do is drive more people away, because people say all kinds of high-minded things, but what they want is something that will excite them, something that will bring a smile to their face, something that will make them turn on the telly instead of turning it off.
Yeah, yeah. No, OK, it's a fair point. David, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
And can I just say, before we say bye to you, that people are very pleased to see you back, Mr Mellor.
Well,
Jean
I'm
Abbott
glad to
says,
be back,
nice to see David Mellor back. And Wilhelmina Graham says, what a lovely surprise to see David Mellor. You have been missed.
Well,
so
I shall go away and shed a tear in a corner and know that it ain't all over yet.
It's not over yet, David. Oh, good to see you. Right, let's get a more Labour perspective on this with political commentator Andy Williams. Andy, good morning to you. You'll have heard David Mellor there. Loose cannons on the Labour front bench. Keir Starmer's unexciting, no real convictions. He's got a lot to battle against if he's going to win over those floating voters.
Look, I don't think this is going to be an easy election for Labour. I know they're miles ahead in the polls, and I do think they will win a majority. He obviously has 14 years of Conservative Party chaos and failure on his side. I also think, by the way, that Rishi Sunak will prove himself to be a really poor campaigner. He is not somebody who is comfortable going out there and speaking to normal people. We saw that yesterday. I think people will warm to Keir Starmer in this campaign. I actually think the Labour front bench is incredibly united. I think they're all on the same page. I think this will be a disciplined campaign. I think it could be a very boring campaign because actually, to the point about TV debates, what does Keir Starmer have to lose? It's about shutting up shop and running a smart, sensible, disciplined campaign.
The Labour Party have a lot to do, though, don't they, in 6 short weeks? They've got those 6 pledges last week, but there's no meat on the bone with them just yet. There's no sign of a manifesto, even though we're told it will come in the next few weeks. And there's a number of seats with no candidates selected.
Well, there's been a lot of work done behind the scenes on the manifesto. That is nearly ready, and I'm confident that it will be a lot more comprehensive than what we've seen so far. I think it will be very detailed. In terms of candidates, the Tories actually have more seats to fill than Labour. So, yes, Labour have been caught on the hop a little bit by this, but the Conservatives have a lot of work to do as well. There will be vetting going on furiously on both sides. I think, Labour does remain a bit of a blank canvas. That is a risk, of course. People do want to see more. But the reality is this election is a referendum on the Conservatives and their 14 years in power. It's a referendum on Rishi Sunak's record as well. He's broken 4 of his 5 pledges, 4 out of 5. He has no legacy, not one single flight's gone to Rwanda. He hasn't even got his legacy smoking bill through. So actually, I think the public will look at this and say, I'm not too bothered about Keir Starmer. I just want rid of Rishi Sunak and the Tories.
Yeah, but and I understand what you're saying, but heck, that's no way for Britain to be in 2024, is it? To say people aren't bothered about Keir Starmer. The man could be our next Prime Minister. We should be bothered by him. We should be enthused by the person who's leading our country, or at least wants to lead our country.
Well, in an ideal world, we would be. And as I said, I think people will warm to him over time. But I just have to be honest, I don't believe people are going to get very excited about this particular individual. But I don't think people are very excited about Rishi Sunak either. And I don't think they were in the first place. And he didn't win a general election to become Prime Minister. I would say we've tried a bit of excitement. Boris Johnson was pretty exciting. He was a disaster. Liz Truss was kind of exciting in a cracker's way, and look how that turned out. Actually sensible, managerial, intelligent, thoughtful, empathetic, those are all good qualities. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room.
OK. Andy Williams, thank you very much for your time this morning. Good to see you.
Now, earlier on, we talked to Reform's Deputy Leader, Ben Habib.
The way the Conservative Party will wish to spin this whole election is, who do you want to vote against? But if you want to change the country for the better, if you want to change in direction in the way the country is governed, you've got to decide who you wish to vote for, not who you wish to vote against. And actually, the only change on offer on the ticket is from Reform UK. If you look at Conservative Party policy, the way it's played out, their high taxation, big borrowing, big state intervention, high immigration, net zero, and Labour are that plus a bit more, all on the all on the, all in the same direction. Whereas Reform UK stands 180 degrees against virtually every single thing I just said. So, if people want to change in the way the country's governed, they've got to vote for it. And that's the challenge we're going to have, is getting people out who would otherwise be disillusioned with politics, disillusioned with small c conservatism, because even though they want it, no party is prepared to offer it. We need to get them off their sofas into the polling booths on the 4th of July, voting for Reform UK.
Look, want to ask you... Oh, wow, that was us speaking to Ben Habib a little bit earlier on in the programme.
Now, emergency services have reported at least 4 people have been killed, 16 injured after a building collapsed on a beach in Majorca.
Yes, the building gave way at 8:30 p.m. local time on Thursday. Reports indicate that the first floor collapsed into the ground floor, trapping diners. No British casualties have been reported so far.
Following this is our reporter, Charlie Peters. Morning, Charlie. So what do we know at this stage?
Well, as we speak, concrete and masonry are being removed from the scene as emergency services worked through the night to try and recover some of those trapped in the rubble. As you say, 16 injured, known at this time, 7 of them in a critical condition. An initial report suggested that a terrace hanging over the front of the restaurant collapsed at about 8:40 local time last night and has actually gone into the basement of the building. Those are the initial reports. No official confirmation, of course, on the cause of the collapse, although there were no adverse weather effects taking place yesterday, and there isn't a recent pattern of collapses on the island. Last reports of building collapses a few years ago, and they were much older buildings. But this building, the Majorca Beach Club, it did open this new terrace on Wednesday. According to its Instagram page, this is a very recent addition to the building, and initial reports from witnesses at the scene suggest that it was extremely busy last night, 8:40 p.m, in the swing of its usual evening service. And of course, Majorca is an extremely popular tourist destination. Some 17 million people visited it last year, most of them German. The second biggest tourist market was Britain, and then after that, internal travel from the rest of Spain to the archipelago. So it's a dire situation, and emergency services are actually pleading with locals on the ground last night to remain silent so they could listen for sounds of life within the rubble. So it would have been an appalling scene to witness. Total silence as dust and that concrete and masonry was removed, with firefighters and ambulances working through the night. As we understand it, every single available ambulance on the island was dispatched to the scene after 9 p.m. by the time the whole island emergency services were alerted. So really desperate scenes there. As we stand, 4 dead so far. No confirmation on their identities, but local media report does suggest that 3 of them are women, 1 of them is a man, and 2 are workers at the beach club itself. But we'll wait for official confirmation and for more details on those injured in this appalling situation.
OK, Charlie Peters, thank you for that update.
Oh,
just horrific, isn't it?
Thoroughly depressing. And we've probably all been to sort of bars and things a bit like that when you go on the continent. Some of them never look that safe,
no,
do they?
You'd never think of it. Yeah, you'd never, ever think of it, would you? Awful.
Dear me. Right, OK, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Here's Annie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you are exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some breeze, some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine. Highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's time for our biggest cash giveaway so far. A massive £20,000 in cash has to be won. And if you've ever wondered, what is it like to win a GB News giveaway?
I don't know, but we did catch up with Phil Cox, who was our very first winner.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I'm from Leeds and I won the Great British Giveaway. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. It only took me two seconds just to text. I'd say, why not? What is it, the price of a text and £2 to enter? Yeah, I mean, you hear about people winning things all the time, but you don't actually know anyone that wins them. So sometimes you think, oh, I'll never be me, or wonder if it's, you know, just a setup, but it is actually 100% genuine. But obviously, whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was. And they're going to get even more money this time round. So why wouldn't you go in the draw? And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
Well, there you go. And if you want to be our next winner, the prize is £20,000 in tax-free cash. So here's how you could make it yours.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Do stay with us. We are going to be speaking to the Lib Dems local government spokesperson, Helen Morgan. That's next.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we're delighted about this because the boss of JD Wetherspoon has credited demand for fashionable Guinness as the pub chain reported a jump in sales.
Now, Guinness has benefited from a boom in demand over recent years, shaking off its association with rugby lads and old men to appeal to a much younger audience and loads more women.
We've got our Guinness here.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
I'm not sure about this boozing on air at this time of the morning, but I'll let you off on this occasion.
As it's you, Tim, as it's you. Now, Guinness is an acquired taste for many people, so I'm surprised it's become so popular.
Yes, it is a real surprise. I think it's always been a popular drink among the demographic you mentioned, the older guy. There's about 80 or 90% of pub trade over the last 30 or 40 years, and probably longer, are a similar range of products. But there's a varying 10, 20% according to fashion. You had vodka Red Bull 20 years ago. You had an Irish cider poured over ice, which came from no one knows where. You had Alco Pops. So there's an unpredictable range of products which have been the fashion of the moment. But the fashion of the moment, very unpredictably this time, is Guinness. And no one knows why. As you say, it's an acquired taste. Young people tend not to like it. Most of the fashionable drinks over the decades have been quite sweet. And Guinness obviously isn't. So, yes, I think the Guinness brewery, St James's Gate in Dublin, they'll say it's brilliant marketing. But like the rest of us, they rely a bit on luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is it? It's 7:27. Good morning to you. Sorry, I was having to focus.
You're like...
This is the very focal thing, you know what it's like. 7:27, good morning to you. Now, the Lib Dems are pledging to give patients the right to see a GP within 7 days or just 24 hours for an urgent call.
Well, they would do this by recruiting 8,000 more GPs, which would enable an extra 65 million appointments a year.
Let's talk to the Lib Dems local government spokeswoman, Helen Morgan, who joins us now. Great to see you this morning. I'm slightly intrigued. Tell me how this works, in the sense that Ed Davey, when all this sort of happened on Wednesday night, Ed Davey made a great speech, but sort of saying, acknowledging that you weren't going to get into government, you weren't going to be the largest party. So why then launch plans indicating what you would do if you were in government?
Well, I think we've always been able to influence the agenda, even though we're not a particularly big party. So if you look, for example, at the windfall tax, we started calling for one of those in October 21 to help people out with their energy bills. That later became Labour policy, and then that became government policy. So it's really, really important to set the agenda. And we have proved that we can be effective in coming up with really good ideas that make people's lives better and getting government to run with them ultimately.
What about this plan, though, the right for patients to see a GP within 7 days, which is going to be at the heart of the Liberal Democrats' election offer? It doesn't sound very good, does it? I mean, if you are sick, you can see a doctor in a week's time. You'll be over your sickness by then, wouldn't you?
Well, urgent appointments would have a right within 24 hours. So obviously people who are really, really poorly need to see their GP straight away. And that's enshrined in this plan as well. But at the moment, if your issue is non-urgent, lots of people are waiting over 2 weeks. I've just waited over 5 here in Shropshire. So there are a lot of people who would really benefit from this right to see their GP within a week. And I think it's really important to have a high standard to work to so that people can feel confident that they are going to be seen, that they're going to be able to get back to work and that they're going to be able to continue with their life as normal.
Because, and it's a perfectly valid point you make, saying, well, you can influence government, you can influence opposition, and there's a lot to be said for that. But because, you're doing it from the outside, if you like, does that mean that you've not had to overly focus on the funding for this? Because obviously funding for, 8,000 more GPs within the next 5 years, I mean, it's a big ask.
It is a big ask. We think it's going to cost about £4 billion over 5 years. But we will have a fully costed manifesto ready to go when our manifesto launches. And we'll definitely be able to find a way to fund this. We've already come up with lots of ideas that would enable us to do better on public services without hurting hardworking people and their families. So, for example, reversing the banking surcharge, reversing the levy, closing the gap on an uncollected tax. There are lots of different things we could do, and we will have a properly costed manifesto in due course.
We've been talking about the election debates this morning. There's talk of Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer potentially doing up to 6 debates before the election. That's what Rishi Sunak would like to do, at least anyway. Would Sir Ed Davey like to be a part of these election debates? And do you think Reform should share the stage as well?
Well, I'm sure Ed would love to be part of those election debates. I think it's really important for voters to be able to hear from all of the major parties because they're going to have all of those candidates on their ballot paper. So I would like to see properly balanced election debates, with full representation on them.
Well, I mean, we had that a few years ago. I can't remember now if it wasn't 2019. It might have been 2017. It might have been 2015. But it turned into a bit of a free-for-all. There were so many people on the stage. I wonder if that is that beneficial to the viewers, to the voters watching that?
Well, I think they need to be well chaired and well managed, and there's all sorts of different formats you can use. We don't want to see people talking over each other. It's awful. But clearly, people go to the ballot box. They've probably got a choice of 4 or 5 candidates from major, well-recognised parties, and I think they need to be able to hear from those leaders.
Wanted to ask you about a YouGov poll out this morning that reform could threaten 28 Tory seats in the country. How does that make you feel as, up until now, the third biggest party in this country? You were, until very recently, the biggest threat to the Tories for people that wanted to vote for the Tories, would-be voters that couldn't bring themselves to vote Labour. Have they made you redundant as a party?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, if we look at the local elections that just happened in May, we beat the Tories. We got more councillors elected than the Tories, and Reform got 2, I think. So, it's all very well having polling that says you're going to do very well, but the reality is Reform have never performed at the ballot box, and all its sort of various predecessors in their different forms have only ever had 1 or 2 MPs elected, and those have been well-established Conservatives who have defected. So I don't think that's going to be a threat in reality when it comes to election day, because they haven't got any track record of performing at the ballot box.
Lib Dems have always been very, very good at local campaigning. It's why you do well at local elections. I mean, it's been known for generations now. Is it a deliberate change of tactic this time round that you've essentially said, look, we're focusing on about 80 seats that we think we can win? Is that a change of tactic? Is that saying, yes, stick with the sort of local campaigning issues because that's where we're good?
Well, obviously, we have to channel our resource into the seats where we think we can win. We're a real threat to the Conservatives across a number of different seats, whether that's in the Blue Wall, in the South West, in rural seats like mine in Shropshire. So obviously, we're going to focus our efforts where we think we can win. And we do work hard as MPs. We do consider ourselves to be local champions, listening to the people who live in our area and making sure we're following up on their issues. But we do have a consistent message across all of those places because the issues that matter to people most are fairly consistent, and that is healthcare, being unable to see a GP, having an awful wait for an ambulance or in an A&E. It's the cost of living. So a lot of people struggling to make ends meet, struggling with their mortgage bills, which definitely aren't coming down, and struggling with their energy bills. And then we see people worried about the environment that they live in. So the quality of the water that they're drinking and the scandal of the sewage that's pouring into their rivers and seas. So it's a consistent message across all of those seats that we're fighting. And it's something that is offered to everybody. Everybody will have an opportunity to vote for a Liberal Democrat candidate, but obviously we'll be putting our resources into the places where we think we can make a real indentation and win the seat.
OK. Helen Morgan, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just think it's very interesting. It's the first time that I can remember where certainly the Liberal Democrats, and we're also seeing it from Reform as well, are going into an election and not saying they can win.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of saying we don't expect to win, but we just want to have
seats.
We just want to have some seats and have some influence.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting shift, I think. Whether it will make a difference, because then perhaps people say, well, look, this is what I'm voting for an MP rather than for a Prime Minister, which is what a lot of people do. Maybe that's a significant change. It'd be interesting to see if it works or not.
It's interesting, isn't it? And it is interesting to note as well that every time that we've spoken to the Lib Dems, and by that I mean yesterday and today, talk of Ed Davey. Is that going to be a massive distraction? His role in the post office scandal. I can see loads of emails coming through. So let us know what you think about that. gbnews.com/your say.
OK, we've got the sport with Paul Coyte in just a moment.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Trains have been stopped between Dundee and Perth because of a fallen tree on the line. In Derbyshire, the A50 is closed westbound between junctions 4 and 5 from Toyota Island to the A516 at Hilton after a lorry caught fire causing delays. Trains aren't stopping at Wolverhampton station because of a signalling problem. Buses replacing trains between Wolverhampton and Birmingham International. In Cambridgeshire on the A14, 2 lanes are closed westbound at junction 24B at Swavesey between Cambridge and Huntingdon. So after overnight roadworks overran, there are queues from junction 25 at Bar Hill. In Surrey on the A3, it's down to a single lane northbound for emergency repairs between Hook and Tolworth, taking half an hour in queues from Esher Common. And there are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk after a technical problem. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's sports time. You OK?
Yes, I was just going, you do this bit.
Oh, right, that's what that was. I was like, yes.
Softball.
It's sports time with Paul Coit, who's here with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Should we talk about Lucas Paquetá?
What is that smile? Really, it's lovely.
Thank you.
But it worries me.
Paquetá, yes.
Yes, Lucas Paquetá. You know, this is a worry. Gambling in football is a huge worry. It goes back years, back to the old days, and you think of Stan Bowles back in the 70s that used to play for Queen's Park Rangers, and before he'd go out on the pitch, he'd go to the betting shop and have a few quid on the game and come back again. Obviously, it's banned. You can't gamble on football if you're involved in the game because, for obvious reasons, you may be able to affect things. There are some players we've seen already where we've had some problems. Ivan Toney and Sandro Tonali from Newcastle, who ended up with huge bans. But at the moment, we're looking at Lucas Paquetá. Now, you know the story about Lucas Paquetá, don't you?
It was about yellow cards, wasn't it?
Charged by the FA for allegedly getting booked deliberately for the improper purpose of affecting the betting market. So basically, he has got yellow cards and they were very questionable, and people are wondering whether actually he's done this on purpose because other people are betting on what he's doing. Are you OK? You're not, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm having a turn.
OK.
Should we talk about Lucas?
4 games investigated. Was this me this time?
No, it's not you.
Are you sure it's not me? Are you sure it's not me?
It really isn't you. It's our sheer unprofessionalism.
Yeah, sorry.
Your professionalism, just carrying on.
Yes, I'm trying my very best.
It's impressive.
If you could only see what I could see right now.
Oh, I do apologise.
4 games investigated. Anyway, Lucas Paquetá has said he's extremely surprised and upset by the verdict. So we will have to see. And
Watch this space.
Well, if it's proven that he's actually been doing this on purpose, there's one thing banning someone for a year, but whereas you've had players that have been banned for actually making bets, which haven't affected what they've been involved in and what they've seen, with him, it's completely the other story. So basically,
it's the end of the line.
It should be the end of the line,
if
but we'll see what happens. Also,
yes.
There's a big move to Man City, and that's certainly going to be off now.
Should we talk about Luke Littler?
Oh, let's.
He's continued his astonishing rise.
His astonishing rise continues, correct. Premier League darts final. 14,000 fans at the O2. There he is. That's Luke Humphreys in the background. That's just as he's about to throw his 9-dart finish. Look at the excitement on his face.
Good lad.
Look at that lad. 17 years old. Loving every minute of it. This is straight after the 9-dart finish.
That's the girlfriend.
His girlfriend there. She's given him a big kiss because she's just seen the cheque for £275,000 that's coming his way.
She's hoping for a ring.
Yes, well, I'm sure it'll be a nice one as well. 200 grand he won for the World Championships, all at 17, and his star continues to rise.
Yeah,
good on him. And when you hear an interview, he seems very down to earth, which I like.
He does. He see these.
I hope he stays that way.
I hope he stays,
grounded.
Grounded.
Well, this is the point, isn't it? I've seen it, whether it be sports, music, anybody. They're very lovely, get the first taste of it, and then you get, a little bit big for your boots, and then get over the hill. So hopefully people will keep him grounded. It's all about the family around him.
Yeah.
It's true.
Family around him.
Luke Hamilton.
Or Lewis Hamilton, even.
What did I say?
Well, we've had Lucas Paquetá, we've had Luke Littler and Luke Hamilton.
You can be forgiven. It's a bit confusing.
Yeah, there's too many Lukes, aren't there? Lewis Hamilton has. No, sorry, you sorry.
I'm just getting out. I'm just getting out the shot now.
Oh, it's embarrassed.
You do this bit. I'm too embarrassed.
Come on, it's OK.
Look at his little head.
Can you just bear with me a sec? Listen, it's all right. Don't worry. It's OK.
Up your cup.
Everybody calls him Luke from time to time. It happens to everyone.
Don't worry, I don't know anything about sport.
Oh, I know.
I think you do a very good job.
I tell you what, let's forget about Lewis.
You're going to...
No, I've had it now. Give us a bit...
don't throw a strop there. It's the Monaco Grand Prix, for crying out loud.
I know, but we'll talk about it later. What about the Olympic podium as well?
Right, the Olympic podium, I don't know whether you get the idea that I love the Olympics and I love Olympic stuff.
You do.
We've done the medals. We've been doing the torch. Now look at this is the podium. The podium has been unveiled.
Oh, I was stood there not very long ago.
And there we are. And do you know what they are, by the way? Those mascots. Do you know what they're supposed to be?
They look like sweets.
They're actually hats.
Oh.
They're friges.
That's not as fun as sweets.
They're the symbols of freedom of France, and they're sort of like walking hats. But, you should have the first, second and third, 3 different levels, but you've got the gold medal in the middle, the silver and the bronze are exactly the same either side. But there we are. I just thought I'd let you... As these things are being drip-fed from Paris, I thought I'd show you...
Yeah, lovely. It's nice to see it.
But you're across it, as always.
I'm always across it.
Yeah,
size of those medals, you ain't be able to walk with one of them around your neck.
I know, but that's what you want. You want a great big medal. Little tiny weeny medals, like that nice medal. That's what you want. With a little bit of Eiffel Tower in them.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Quoty, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Also, you might want to clarify who Luke Littler is kissing. Apparently, Nick F has been in touch saying that was his mum.
That was his mum?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I'm seeing a young lady there, and obviously when he's 17, his mum's probably very young. Well, probably much younger than I am, so that's probably why. So I apologise.
Yeah.
Is that his mum?
So apparently the girlfriend's in the background, that's the mum.
And who are those fellas in the...
Well, that's more important.
Who are they?
They're Oompa Loompas.
There he is, looking very happy. Well done, Luke.
Well, good name.
Or Lewis, or wherever you are.
Shut up.
Sorry. That's it. It's done. Won't we?
Right. Thanks, Quoty. Do you stay with us?
Yes.
We'll be going through the papers, won't we? With Nigel Nelson and Claire Pearsall. That's next.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sam Richardson is a singer-songwriter from St Agnes in Cornwall.
Much of his music reflects a sense of frustration with life in a coastal town.
We've got a lot of empty shops in a lot of our town centres, which is sort of causing a lot of death on the high street. I know that's a problem everywhere.
Similar problems across the border in Devon. Ilfracombe is the most deprived area in North Devon. Twice the town has applied for levelling up funding. Twice it's been turned down, something North Devon MP Selene Saxby says is frustrating.
It's very complicated. It's not as straightforward as just throwing money at the problem. They're very deep issues.
For several years, the government has acknowledged that rural areas need extra help, but so far that help doesn't stretch to our coasts. The MP for St Austell and Newquay is pushing the government to change all this.
Truly local people are finding it really challenging because we often have sort of low-wage seasonal work, but very high house prices pushed up because of second homes and holiday lets, etc. And also, I think the disparity review that Theresa May carried out when she was Prime Minister highlighted that working-class white boys in coastal communities are some of the most disadvantaged people in the country.
Struggling to get on the housing ladder, struggling to find work, struggling to be heard.
It's interesting that a member of the party that's in government recognises that, which is great, because it is a really important thing. But that government, for the last 10 years, has also cut £500 million in youth services around the country.
No one thinks the problem of coastal deprivation can be solved overnight. The issue of disaffected young white males even harder.
Are the newspapers getting you down? My wife didn't divorce me that month. Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
All right, it's time to have a look at the newspapers for you this morning. And joining us today are senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and former government advisor Claire Pearsall. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Nigel, can we have a look at the Times and the China-Taiwan situation?
Yeah, it's sort of a conflict we tend to forget. What with Ukraine going on and what's happening in Gaza. And, of course, this is the next potential flashpoint in the world, and it would be probably much more serious than both. What has happened is that Taiwan has a new president, President Lai, and he's been making some sort of noises about sovereignty for Taiwan, the age-old problem. Yeah. China claims Taiwan. Taiwan says it should be independent, which it is at the moment. So the Chinese respond by launching a rather threatening military exercise. And Taiwan, of course, then launches back, and so they put sort of warplanes in the air, they sent in the Navy, the army were put on alert. Nobody was actually shooting at anybody, but it was that sort of feeling that the tensions were there. And it's just, it is an ongoing difficult one. If this one ever did kick off, America would come in on Taiwan's side, and we really would be in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of these problems which has been sort of bubbling away for so many years now. And we all, over here, we forget it. It happens, the two-China issue.
Well, this is it. They want it to be one China.
Yeah.
And I think therein lies half the problem, is that Taiwan is itself a sovereign place, sovereign territory. That's how it looks. And China, whenever they take offence, China then like to park ships around Taiwan and surrounding islands. It's a show of strength, it's a show of intimidation. And as Nigel said, I'm not sure that we will see it kick off, because a lot of this is almost... we can do it if we want
posturing,
to.
Isn't it?
It is. It is a little bit of political posturing. And it was the same where Nancy Pelosi when she was Speaker, came over to Taiwan, and the Chinese didn't take kindly to that and did another show of parking ships off the coast and looking like they were ready for war. So anything that upsets them, they tend to retaliate in that manner. No shots have been fired, but it is a worry, and I think a new president is always going to be of concern to China, especially when they want to exert the right of Taiwan to exist in its own entity and not be consumed by China.
Claire, let's stay with you, shall we, and look at the Star front page. Now, if you're a journalist, lots of us, me included, have had to cancel holidays to be here for the general election, but not the same if you're a member of the Great British Public. Holiday bookings are up. People are escaping the general election campaign chaos.
And this is sort of quite interesting. There was a 57% increase in people looking for holidays as soon as Rishi Sunak announced the 4th of July date. People are either looking to escape actually on the 4th of July to get out of polling day, and they want to leave the country. And people are looking now at dates around that to avoid what is going to be a lengthy 6 weeks. Now, for us, we live it. We have little choice but to be here.
And cancel our holiday?
Have you cancelled yours?
Well, we were doing a little break in the middle of June.
Right.
That's now not happening, but our major holiday, funnily enough, was booked for the 7th of July, so we'll be off out of the country at that point to recover.
You see, I was looking at flights last night, so would I fall into these statistics? But it's only because we now know when the date is that we can plan around it.
Well, this is it, but a lot of people are taking it as we want to be out of the country because we can't bear to listen to politicians having a go at each other for 6 weeks. And in some respects, you can't blame them for that. But for the rest of us, no, we have to be here and it's our job to report. And I will get over my denial of the election coming up because I have to go out there and deliver leaflets and speak to people and be on the campaign trail, which is a little bit different.
Fun.
Yes, interesting. It's always interesting. You always meet some very interesting people. You see interesting things, and you see interesting sights. People put up signs. They have enough of leaflets going through the door. So about week 3 or week 4, people will start putting little notes up by their letterboxes saying they're fed up. Thanks. They don't need any more literature.
No, thank you. Nigel, I love this story in the Times.
So do I. This is the first millennial saint.
Right, I love it. Don't you?
Yeah.
But there's a millennial saint. He's only 32, or he was 32.
Well, no, he was a teenager. He was a teenager when he died.
Yeah, so this is a lad called Carlo Acutis, who was 15 years old. He died of leukemia in 2006, but his reputation for miracle working spread, and he cured, a family of a Brazilian boy prayed to him, and he cured the boy of pancreatic disease. 21-year-old Costa Rican woman, she had a bad brain injury after a bike accident. She recovered. So what the Catholic Church does is they have an authentication unit to check on miracles. They sent the unit out to go and find out if this was actually genuine. It's been decided that these were genuine miracles, and as a result, this lad who really enjoyed playing his PlayStation and doing computer games will be canonised and become a saint.
But this is after... I mean, this is people praying to him after he died.
Yes, that's
He's got a global following.
But this is only because his body was on display for such a long time, and they were saying it was incorruptible, it wasn't decaying, even though it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all just a bit...
I mean, it's like all these things, whether you believe it or not, really.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I think it's very interesting, that one.
There you go. We're out of time. Thank you both. Here's Annie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you are exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine. Highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Trains have been stopped between Dundee and Perth because of a fallen tree on the line. In Derbyshire, the A50 is closed westbound between junctions 4 and 5 from the A38 at Toyota Island to Hilton after a lorry caught fire. There are long delays as a result. Now, trains aren't stopping at Wolverhampton station because of a signalling problem, with buses replacing trains between Wolverhampton and Birmingham International. In Cambridge on the A14, there's a lane closed westbound just before junction 24B at Swavesey between Cambridge and Huntingdon. So after overnight roadworks overran earlier, there are queues from junction 25 at Bar Hill. In Surrey on the A3, it's down to a single lane northbound for emergency repairs between Hook and Tolworth, taking half an hour in queues from East Common, and there are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk after a technical problem. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Friday, the 24th of May. Today, the Prime Minister claims his Labour counterpart doesn't have the courage to debate him as he has no plan for the country.
Yes, the Prime Minister has challenged the Leader of the Opposition to not one but 6 television debates in the run-up to the election. Will he regret the strategy?
A new poll reveals that reform could pose a threat to 28 Tory seats. That's as a record number of Conservative MPs are set to stand down.
Reform UK's deputy leader had no knowledge of Nigel Farage's planned constituency campaign, apparently, beginning next week.
I had, to be honest with you, put in place some preparations to launch next week.
I'm deputy leader of Reform UK, as you mentioned, and I was entirely unaware of his plans to launch a campaign next week.
At least 4 people are dead and more than a dozen have been injured after a restaurant building collapses on a beach in Majorca.
The terrace at the 2-storey restaurant has reportedly collapsed into the basement, with emergency services working through the night to recover those trapped in the rubble.
A court is set to rule whether child killer Lucy Letby can appeal against her convictions.
Well, a huge weekend of sport ahead with us. We've got the FA Cup final, Scottish Cup final, the Rugby Champions Cup final, the Monaco Grand Prix, England versus Pakistan in the cricket, the French Tennis Open, the Women's Champions League final. Our friend Jack Catterall fights Josh Taylor. It's the richest game in football, the Championship playoff between Southampton and Leeds. And if you like cycling, don't forget the Giro d'Italia.
Morning. It's a bit of a cooler day for most of us today, but how are things shaping up for the bank holiday weekend? Find out all the details with me a little later on.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Oh, loads of you getting in touch on the election, of course. Interesting one just come in from Philip Marsh, who says holiday booking up by 57%. That's because... he says, here we go, despite the fact that we've all been told we're too poor and can't afford anything. You would get that a lot with the cost of living crisis and people saying, yeah, but loads of people are going on holidays. But I think, to be fair, there will always be people who can afford things. But you've got to spare a thought for those people who, in the cost of living crisis, really are struggling to do anything. And so they won't be going on a holiday. The rest of us who are, imagine, you might go on a cheaper holiday or do something, but you can still go on holiday. So it's thinking about those and bearing a thought for those at the bottom of the pile. That's what it's all about.
Jezzy Young says, here's one for you. A dream team of Labour and the Liberals in a coalition government. Starmer and Davey. Not sure.
No, I'm not sure about that one.
Do keep your thoughts coming in on any of those. gbnews.com/your say.
Well, the Prime Minister has launched the opening gambit of this election, accusing Sir Keir Starmer of lacking the courage to debate him.
Well, Rishi Sunak wants to debate Sir Keir Starmer every week in the run-up to voting day. This comes as a survey shows that Reform UK are threatening 28 Conservative seats across the country.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Well, it's certainly a shot across the bows of Sir Keir Starmer, but it's interesting that this clearly is all being framed as a debate between the two men who could be Prime Minister and not a wider debate between the leaders of all the parties that are running.
Well, that's a really interesting point. I mean, Rishi Sunak is clearly feeling very confident about his own ability to perform in these TV debates. Asking for 6 debates is pretty extraordinary. Very interesting that the Prime Minister doesn't seem to want other parties to be involved. Is that because of the threat from Reform UK? Now, we've learnt this morning that Reform is a serious threat to the Conservatives in 28 different constituencies. Interestingly, Reform are actually polling best in Labour-held areas, but Labour has such a poll lead there that it'll be the Conservatives who end up suffering. It doesn't look like Reform is going to win any seats, maybe one, possibly 2 seats. But the real problem for the Conservatives is that the Reform Party is likely to split their vote, and the Reform Party could leapfrog the Conservatives coming in to second place. So that could be why the Prime Minister doesn't want other parties involved in these election debates. He does think, though, that he can prove himself to be more popular than Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer isn't a particularly popular leader of the opposition. The Labour Party as a whole is more popular. But to be honest, Rishi Sunak's personal polling isn't particularly good either.
I wanted to ask you as well, Olivia, about the new GB News People's Poll, which puts Labour way out ahead.
It does. It puts Labour 27 points ahead overall. And most worryingly for Rishi Sunak, it puts Labour ahead on both the economy and immigration, 2 areas which Rishi Sunak is using. He wants those to be the real battlegrounds of this election. Now, on immigration, it's sort of all to play for, according to our People's Poll, because 51% of people who were polled don't trust either main party on immigration. So it's going to be Rishi Sunak's job over the next 6 weeks to try and prove that his Rwanda plan would work after an election and that he can be trusted by those swing voters, those disenfranchised voters, more than Keir Starmer.
OK, Olivia Utley there for us in Westminster. Thank you very much indeed.
OK, let's talk to the founder of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns, who joins us now. Great to see you, Alexander. In terms of this election, in terms of things that are being pledged and promised, we're not hearing anything so far being pitched at the youth vote especially, are we?
No, we're not. And I think it's going to be a very interesting campaign, because what we're going to see is probably Labour making this strong assumption that, you know, all of the 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 demographic will just kind of sweep to them and the other parties will kind of get drips and drabs. Actually, what we're seeing is 25% are still undecided. Yes, Labour are ahead when we poll young people, but I think Labour need to make sure that they don't kind of underestimate the fact that the other parties will at some point inevitably put policies in there around housing and helping young people get into the housing ladder. So far not seen anything, but I'm sure it will come in due course.
Alexander, we've been talking about debates this morning, these election debates. Rishi Sunak saying he wants to debate Sir Keir Starmer 6 times in the run-up to polling day. As Keir Starmer's camp insisted he wants to take part in the debates, but haven't confirmed how many there will be so far. In terms of the youth vote, will young people be engaging with television debates, or will they be looking to social media, things like that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know whether TV debates from a kind of youth perspective will massively move the dial on people's perspective on both of the kind of main leaders and policies. But what I would say is, naturally, when you see debates, some of them do get clipped on social media. So I don't know if people will be watching the debate end to end, but I think it will be significant because, you know, whoever's presenting it will potentially ask things that young people care about. You know, we know that Labour potentially are going to look at 0-hour contracts. So Keir Starmer gets asked about that and Rishi Sunak gets his perspective. It'll be interesting to see what they talk about. So not watching it end to end, no, but actually some of the clips definitely will have some perspective, yeah.
Just a quick one, just a brief one, and sort of on that, because the problem, what concerns me about young people getting a lot of information off social media, and even if it is clipped off a TV programme, is that you lose context. And context is vital in all of this, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Stephen. I do think that sometimes it's important that they do watch the debate, because naturally a clip doesn't tell the full story. And, you know, when we talk about how things are going to be funded, I think both parties have got to be honest with young people. There probably will at some point in the next parliament have to be tax increases. I think it's, you know, a lot of young people are saying to me that they're really looking forward to hopefully both of the main political leaders talking about, are they going to cut national insurance and they're going to continue to cut taxes? I don't think that's realistic. And actually, probably we're going to see some discussion around that. So as you say, they probably should watch it, and we're definitely going to be recommending as much as possible that people do watch the full programme, yeah.
And just very quickly, sorry, I know we are squeezing you for time, but what are the youth looking for? What do you think the main priorities will be? What will they be looking for in the manifestos?
A lot about, you know, kind of minimum wage, kind of how they're going to be helped to get on the housing ladder. Transport's a big thing. So, you know, all of the things that young people care about. And actually, it'll be interesting because we do typically see that young people are persuaded by their parents to vote. But actually, when we poll members, about 30% are saying that actually they're undecided because they're going to make up their mind. You know, their parents might have their perspective, but they've got very different, you know, thoughts. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the election for sure.
OK, Alexander Cairns, the CEO of the Youth Vote UK, thank you very much indeed.
Right, let's talk to former Labour advisor Kevin Marr. Kevin, good to see you this morning. I wonder, in terms of an advisory role, how would you advise Keir Starmer and indeed the front bench, the Labour front bench, to handle this campaign? They've got a lot of meat to put on a lot of bones to convince people.
Well, Keir Starmer's got some very, very good advisors and very experienced hands around him. And I think what we'll see is a continuation of a strategy, which is in two parts, which is to put forward a very cautious offer. And cautious because I think that's, as Benjamin Disraeli once put it, the temper of the times. I think we've seen quite a lot of eventful politics in the last 4 or 5 years, and we've seen some histrionic politics very much as well. I think the public are looking for a leader to steer them into calmer waters. So not so much Keir Starmer, but steer calmer, if you like. I think that's going to be part of it, and I think it's also about allowing the Conservatives to do what they're doing, which is imploding. I mean, this is a government that had an incredible opportunity in December 2019 when Boris Johnson won that election victory with an 80-seat majority. The Tories won in areas they'd never won in before, and they could have reshaped British politics fundamentally. Now, that advantage, that incredible inheritance, has been frittered away in the last 4 years. And the Conservatives have now got a three-pronged problem, which is that they're losing the red wall, they're losing a lot of the Labour-Tory marginals, which would be typical in an election campaign, fair enough. But they've also got the Liberal Democrats zeroing in on their vote, particularly in the southwest of England. And they've also got Reform UK, like this free radical rattling around the body politic of British politics that could do untold damage. And Rishi Sunak has got to try and fight 3 battles against 3 opponents who can all do him in. So he's got an incredibly difficult opportunity. And part of the Labour campaign will be to keep serenely moving along, only saying things that are sensible and costed and all of that, and allowing Rishi Sunak and his party to do the rest.
Yeah, well, but what's interesting, just as you were talking, we got confirmation that Jeremy Corbyn is going to stand as an independent in Islington North. Now, all right, well, one constituency, perhaps it's not going to make much of a difference, but the fact that he is a former Labour leader, the fact that he obviously has all that momentum campaign behind him and everything else, you wonder if that could actually, in effect, end up presenting as much of a risk to Labour as Reform presents to the Conservatives.
I mean, any general election campaign is a kind of chimp's tea party. It does get messy, and it starts off being quite cordial and all the rest of it, and then descends from there. Really, I mean, I think that's probably the worst kept secret in British politics. I think Jeremy Corbyn was always going to stand as an independent. And for people who live in Islington, I mean, every report I've ever heard from anybody has praised Jeremy Corbyn as a constituency MP. He's been there for 40 years and has been very, very assiduous and obviously gets a lot out of being a local MP. So he'll be a formidable opponent in that seat, but I think it is just in that one seat, and I think that's the context here, where Reform, are pretty rampant all across the country and can do damage to Labour, but mainly will do damage to the Conservatives. And I think we've got 6 weeks of this campaign to go. There's lots of unknowns. This is only the second July general election in 120 years, and the last one, on the 6th of July 1945, saw Winston Churchill turfed out onto the street with a Labour landslide. So the precedents are not good for the Tories in that regard either. So there's a lot of unknowns. There's the kind of the known unknowns that you get in any election campaign. But what really tests the mettle of political leaders is the unknown unknowns. It's the things that you can't foresee, you didn't know are going to happen and to crash into your world. And we've got 6 weeks to go, and there's going to be quite a lot of those.
I don't think anyone's going to care about a 79-year-old president, though, Kevin. Come on, let's be honest. Really good to see you this morning.
They're all superstitious.
Good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, earlier on, we spoke to Reform UK's Deputy Leader, Ben Habib.
The way the Conservative Party will wish to spin this whole election is, who do you want to vote against? But if you want to change the country for the better, if you want to change in direction in the way the country is governed, you've got to decide who you wish to vote for, not who you wish to vote against. And actually, the only change on offer on the ticket is from Reform UK. If you look at Conservative Party policy, the way it's played out, their high taxation, big borrowing, big state intervention, high immigration, net zero, and Labour that plus a bit more, all in the same direction. Whereas Reform UK stands 180 degrees against virtually every single thing I just said. So, if people want to change in the way the country's governed, they've got to vote for it. And that's the challenge we're going to have, is getting people out who would otherwise be disillusioned with politics, disillusioned with small c conservatism, because even though they want it, no party is prepared to offer it. We need to get them off their sofas into the polling booths on the 4th of July, voting for Reform UK.
Look, want to ask you about Nigel Farage. We've only got a minute left with you. He has decided not to stand as a candidate, but telling Tom Harwood on his show last night that he was actually planning to launch a campaign to become an MP next week, and that is why he says the Tories have decided to go early on this general election.
So I'm not sure how much Nigel Farage played in the Prime Minister's mind. I think there are a whole host of other reasons which moved him to call an election now. And I think from Rishi's perspective, it was probably a good move.
Are you saying then you don't believe Nigel? I mean, because the idea that he's got... Hold on a minute. The idea that he's got a general election campaign ready to roll next week, and he was planning to do it, and because of this announcement, he's shelved the whole thing, it's a bit unusual.
Well, I'm Deputy Leader of Reform UK, as you mentioned, and I was entirely unaware of his plans to launch a campaign next week.
That's quite telling.
Very interesting, that, isn't it?
Anyway, we also spoke before to the Lib Dem local government spokesperson about their pledge to hire 8,000 new GPs.
I think we've always been able to influence the agenda, even though we're not a particularly big party. So if you look, for example, at the windfall tax, we started calling for one of those in October 21 to help people out with their energy bills. That later became Labour policy, and then that became government policy. So it's really, really important to set the agenda. And we have proved that we can be effective in coming up with really good ideas that make people's lives better and getting government to run with them ultimately. Well, urgent appointments would have a right within 24 hours. So obviously people who are really, really poorly need to see their GP straight away. And that's enshrined in this plan as well. But at the moment, if your issue is non-urgent, lots of people are waiting over 2 weeks. I've just waited over 5 here in Shropshire. So there are a lot of people who would really benefit from this right to see their GP within a week. And I think it's really important to have a high standard to work to, so that people can feel confident that they are going to be seen, that they're going to be able to get back to work, and that they're going to be able to continue with their life as normal.
That's Lib Dems speaking to us a little bit earlier on. Do stay with us. We're going to be talking about more of the general election fallout. But first, here's your weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you're exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some breeze, some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine. Highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time now for the biggest cash giveaway so far. A massive £20,000 has to be won. And if you've ever wondered what it's like to win one of our giveaways, we caught up with Phil Cox, who won the very first.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I'm from Leeds and I won the Great British Giveaway. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. It only took me two seconds just to text. I'd say, why not? What is it, the price of a text and £2 to enter? Yeah, I mean, you hear about people winning things all the time, but you don't actually know anyone that wins them. So sometimes you think, oh, I'll never be me, or wonder if it's, you know, just a setup, but it is actually 100% genuine. But obviously whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was. And they're going to get even more money this time round. So why wouldn't you go in the draw? And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
Well, you could be our next winner with a whopping £20,000 in tax-free cash up for grabs. Here's how you could make it yours.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We are going to be speaking to Claire Coutinho, who's the Energy Secretary, very shortly. So do stay with us.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him for go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling him a that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And, so, you know, Gareth, speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm not
if I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. It's 8:25. Now, emergency services have reported at least 4 people have been killed and 16 people have been injured after a building collapsed on a beach in Majorca.
Yeah, it gave away on Thursday and apparently the first floor collapsed. Quite a number of people injured. No Brits, as far as we're aware, despite it being obviously a very popular holiday destination for Brits.
Well, joining us now in the studio for more on this developing story is our reporter, Charlie Peters. Good to see you this morning, Charlie. What's the latest?
Well, 7 critically injured, as we understand at this stage, after the emergency services launched a critical operation last night. All ambulances on the island, if they were available, were diverted to Playa de Palma, the beachfront area where this incident happened last night. Fire brigade were also there, and also a crane not typically associated with the emergency services was operating well into the night to remove some of the masonry, rubble, concrete and glass, and also some steel that had collapsed in this terrace collapse last night at 8:40. There are reports that several people were still stuck under the rubble in the early hours. And a police spokesperson said last night to local media they were asking people to remain quiet so they could listen in and hear for any signs of survivors under the rubble. A very intense situation for them. We also heard reports that while the adjacent bars and restaurants did close immediately after the incident occurred, some bars nearby were still playing music and still serving drinks, which could have made the rescue operation more difficult, particularly if they're trying to hear those survivors trapped under the rubble. There was also a report of one man being rescued, a young man who was caught in a cavity created by the collapse. He was retrieved with an injured arm. And alongside the ambulance services and the fire brigade, they've also brought in psychologists from the college on the island of Majorca to assist those who are potentially traumatised by the scene that they were involved with. There's dust, and it's an appalling situation to be involved with. Many people were screaming and running away, while also being warned by the authorities to remain silent so they could listen in. As I said, over 100 people in the emergency services were rushed there last night. And it's understood that the terrace of this beachfront club called the Majorca Beach Club collapsed at about 8:40 onto the diners gathered below. Initial reports suggesting it could have collapsed into the basement. Of the 4 dead, we haven't any official confirmation on who they are, but it's understood there are 3 women, 1 man, and 2 of them are understood to be workers at the beach club, one of them a doorman of Senegalese heritage. So it's a disastrous situation in Majorca, and it's highly likely at this stage that the reports on those who have been injured will continue to rise as we wait for more information.
I mean, it is absolutely shocking, and I think these things resonate with us, Charlie, don't they? Because these are places that a lot of us have been to.
You know, 17 million tourists went to Majorca and the surrounding islands in that archipelago in the last year, most of them German. The second biggest portion were British, but as we understand from the Foreign Office, no official confirmation on any Britons involved in this disaster so far.
OK, Charlie, thank you.
Let's speak now to the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, Claire Coutinho. Good to see you this morning. I wanted to start actually with GB News's People's Poll, which is new out this morning. It shows that, according to the people who took part in this poll, they favoured Labour on the economy and immigration. You can perhaps understand why, especially on the immigration point, when Rishi Sunak confirmed yesterday that flights to Rwanda are not going to take place before the general election. That is your central policy.
Well, I mean, firstly, we would have been able to do that if the Labour Party hadn't voted against the policy 139 times. And I would just say this, you know, the Labour Party have been very critical of that policy, when actually now you're seeing countries across Europe saying they want to do the same thing. One country said that the UK was being a pioneer when it came to this issue, because we know that illegal immigration is putting a huge strain on resources and is something that needs to be dealt with. So I would say to your viewers that if they care about immigration at the next election, that the choice is pretty clear between Keir Starmer, who once said that anything to do with immigration policy was always going to have an undercurrent of racism, and Rishi Sunak, who has, you know, staked, as you say, his political time on making sure that he can tackle illegal immigration and immigration as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, what Keir Starmer's said in the past, in more ways than one, is often irrelevant. You know, we know he's changed his mind on a lot of things, as politicians do. What he has said when it comes to this issue is, look, Rwanda is not the way forward. You know, and this idea of setting up a new border force, which would include intelligence officers and all this sort of thing, and chasing down the gangs at source. I mean, but not with the border force. I know you're chasing the gangs, but you've not set up this new border force, which he wants to do, and that he claims will make the difference.
Well, I mean, nobody else is saying that. So the truth is, if he had really changed his stripes so much, he wouldn't have voted against our policies on immigration 139 times. And at every step of the way, we have been challenged by the Labour Party on wanting to take tougher action on immigration. And the truth is, you know what the Labour Party are like on this, and you know what the Conservative instincts are. We have set out the toughest package of measures when it comes to migration as well, because we know those numbers are too high, which will bring the numbers down by 300,000. And like I said, we're doing everything we can to stop the boats.
I wanted to ask you about, we are very close to now a new record for Conservative MPs who've now declared that they plan to leave Parliament rather than stand for re-election. The current number stands at 72 Tory MPs that are stepping down. Current record is 75. I mean, it does look like rats fleeing a sinking ship, doesn't it? What faith does this instill in would-be Tory voters before the general election?
Well, I mean, we are seeing, I think, tens of people stepping down on the Labour side as well, although ours has been higher. And to be honest, you know, just like the rest of the country, lots of people were in government, they were ministers during a pandemic and inflation crisis. You know, it has been a lot for people. But you still have, you know, many people who are out there fighting so that people can understand the choice that they face at the next election. And we want to be really clear about that. That's why we're setting out detailed plans. You know, I've been talking about energy this morning. We may come onto it. I want people to have cheap energy. You look at Ed Miliband's plans for energy, and actually that's going to raise people's bills. We want to talk about immigration, which we've spoken about already. We've restored stability with the economy, and actually Labour want to introduce French-style union laws. So look, there's a lot of us who are going to be fighting for every single vote to make sure that people understand what the choice is at the next election.
Well, when it comes to energy then, I mean, one of the big issues in reducing inflation, we know, has been lower energy bills, and then we know that Ofgem have declared a new reduction in the price cap, going down, I think it's 7%. But there's an awful lot of concern that in just a couple of months that price cap may rise again. I mean, Cornwall Insight, which is a big market research company, says it could well go back up to beyond where we are now, so raising more than 7% in just a few months. So this is just a temporary glitch, isn't it, getting this nice, cheaper energy?
Well, this is the second big step down we've seen this year. So prices are significantly lower than they are last year. In April, we saw prices come down by about almost £250, and now this is a further £122 off the average bill. But I've also set out further policies today, building on the work that we've done over the last 14 years, to make sure that now we're coming out of the energy crisis and people are starting to see new deals appear in the market, that we're getting more competition, driving down prices, making sure that people are getting a fair share a deal, whether you're a business or a household, because my priority is cheap energy for the country. I know that that's how the country will succeed or fail, whether you're businesses or household. It's really important that we get people cheap energy. And actually, if you look at Ed Miliband's plans, even places like the Tony Blair Institute have said that his plans, which have decarbonisation targets that no other major country have, are going to raise people's bills and hike people's taxes. And we've looked at these numbers, and I should tell you that that's something like £2,000 worth of extra taxes on households because of their overall plans over the course of the next Parliament. That's not what I want for families.
Well, no, and look, to be fair, we haven't seen all the details of that. That's the sort of thing we've got to start really ploughing through when the manifestos come out. But in terms of cheap energy, that's absolutely reliant on energy security, isn't it? Well, what are the Conservatives doing to provide energy security?
Well, I mean, this is exactly right. So one of the things that we've done is set out the largest expansion of nuclear power in 70 years. When we first came in, the Labour Party had bought not a single nuclear power plant in their time in office. We've started big power plants, but one of the things I'm really excited about is factory-built nuclear power, small modular reactors, and we're going to be one of the first countries in the world to have one of these up and running, and I want to see them across the country. We've also built record amounts of clean energy as well, and I've recently set out plans to say we need more gas power plants, and actually we need to be unafraid to say that actually when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, we need to have cheap energy to back it up. But again, I would just come back to instincts and principles between us and the Labour Party on this. We know that cheap energy is important. We're willing to say difficult things and be sensible when it comes to net zero, to say there's no point shooting ourselves in the foot by having really expensive energy to meet climate change targets if no one else in the world is doing that. On the other hand, you've got Ed Miliband and the Labour Party who just want to go further and faster, no matter what the cost is for ordinary households. I don't think that's the right thing. That's why we've set out this approach and we've taken the steps we have today.
Just very briefly, because we're out of time, why don't you scrap the green levy then?
So what I have said today, that I want green levies every year of the next Parliament to be lower, and actually the ones that we've introduced so far have had this important principle, is that savings have to be higher overall, so overall households are saving money. But could you say the same of the Labour Party? I think someone should go and ask Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer what they are going to do to levies on bills in the next Parliament, because it's very clear with the Conservatives that they will be lower every single year than they've been last year with us.
Okay, we are out of time, I'm afraid. Claire Coutinho, Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Right, let's take a short break, but Paul's going to be back with all the sport very shortly.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In North Yorkshire, Station Street in York is closed because of an accident. In Derbyshire, the A50 is closed westbound between junctions 4 and 5 from the A38 at Toyota Island to Hilton after a lorry caught fire causing long delays. Trains aren't stopping at Wolverhampton Station because of a signalling problem. The bus is running between Wolverhampton and Birmingham International. On the M25 in Essex, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise where there's an accident just before junction 26 at Waltham Abbey, causing queues for around 2 miles. In Surrey on the A3, 2 lanes are closed northbound for emergency repairs between Hook and Tolworth, with queues from Esher Common. In Kent, the A249 is partly blocked by an accident off junction 5 of the M2 at Sittingbourne, causing queues, and there are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk after a technical problem. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
8:40, good morning to you. Should we say good morning to Paul Coyte?
Let's.
Oh, go on.
For the final time, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. You know what the news thing is? A very good morning.
Oh, yes.
A very good morning to you.
Yes. It's nice, it's traditional.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and it is a very good morning.
I like it, we should doff our caps.
Yeah, bank holiday weekend and all that. I beg your pardon. What did I nearly say? Luke Littler. Should we talk about Luke?
Oh, we better add.
Did I nearly say something bad?
I think you did.
OK, fine. The rise continues of Luke, 17 years old. He won the Premier League of Darts final yesterday, and he's earned himself... it's not about the money. It's not about the money, it's about the prestige, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, no.
Although the money does help.
Money helps.
£275,000.
Good on him.
Not bad for a 17-year-old.
Not bad.
To go with the £200,000 that he won to get to the final of the World Championships back in January. So he's doing great. And then, so did we realise that it was his mum?
His mum
we saw the
him.
picture of him kissing her. That's lovely. So she's very proud of him, so she should.
Yeah.
You know, that's if you make your mum happy, then that's great.
Well, life's sweet.
Absolutely.
You manage that.
Yeah, but the thing is, he has had a few doubters. As always happens, if anybody gets their first taste of glory, everybody loves you, well done, and then it'll be... Oh, I don't know. What are you saying?
We like to build them up and knock them down.
And knock them down. That's what we do. That is what we do.
He got a 9-darter, didn't he?
He did get a 9-darter in the 11th leg, yeah.
I mean, that's phenomenal.
Well, it's the perfect 9 darts of darts. Is that right?
Yes.
So anyway, it's only... I think it's the fourth time it's ever happened in that Premier League, and the last person that did it in the final went on to win and become a legend, and that was Phil the Power Taylor. So anyway, he's going in the right direction, continues like he is. He's going to be a true legend of darts, and he's only 17 years old.
Yeah, good on him. I like him.
Me too.
Me too. We're all Luke Littler fans here.
We are.
Can we talk about M&S, please?
Oh, you want to do M&S now?
I do, yeah.
Apparently.
Well, the thing is... It's
got
the
to do with sport.
Well, I'll tell you, the FA Cup final, I mean, it's the route to M&S is this way. The FA Cup final is this weekend. So Manchester United versus Manchester City. Marcus Rashford... hoping to play well for Manchester United to, again, prove doubters wrong. He hasn't had a great season. He's been left out of the England side. Well, the England provisional 33, which is going to whittle down to 26. So Marcus Rashford will not be going to Germany. But M&S sponsor England. And there we are. There's their... See, this is... Look...
That's a bit awkward, isn't it? It's front and centre.
It really is a little bit awkward, because there he is in the middle there, and they're probably thinking, who are we going to have model our stuff? Well, Marcus Rashford's obviously going to get going. He looks great. You know, he's real... He looks like a model. He can wear our clothes, looks fantastic. But unfortunately...
he's not in the
Rashford
squad.
In the middle there is not going to be...
Why didn't they edit him out and get someone else in quick?
I don't know. Would it be a bit... What would you do? Would you just... Edit the face and put someone else's face in there, or were there other pictures?
That. No,
can't really do that. It would be a bit.
That's a bit. Yeah.
So yeah, so maybe they're just hoping that we don't mention it, which
we just have.
Well, it's ridiculous. He's not in the squad. So why have you got him advertising? Well, that's a big
But
fail.
then again, it probably takes a lot of time and a lot of money to get all the pictures
They
up.
probably
and
shot that back at Christmas or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, well, you know, it's obviously he's going to be there. And he's one of the big... If it was 6 months ago, you put your
Safe
house on
bet,
it.
yeah.
There you go.
Well...
No, it takes a long time when you do the modelling shots.
I find that, don't you? I find that. Oh, actually, I say that. I've always been sort of one shot and then it's been done.
Really? One-shot wonder?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all over.
Yeah, I can believe it. Paul?
Don't tell me this is the end.
It's the end.
Have you seen how much sport across the weekend? I was going to cover everything.
Run through them, though.
Oh, the FA Cup. We've got the women's we've got the Women's Champions League. There's the Scottish FA Cup final. There's the Giro d'Italia. There's the rugby challenge thing is going on. It's just I feel like I'm doing the end of generation game. The cuddly toy, the coffee percolator. What else was there? There was the fondue set. The fondue set. Yeah. Didn't I do well?
Didn't you? He'll never go, will he? He'll never go, Brucey. No. God love him. Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Nice to see you.
See you. Nice.
Thank you very much.
Right, you've got to be of an age, Ellie.
Yes, you do.
Sorry.
You've got to be old like us.
So sorry.
Do stay with us. We're going to be going through the papers with Claire Pearsall and Nigel Nelson. That's next.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sam Richardson is a singer-songwriter from St Agnes in Cornwall. Much of his music reflects a sense of frustration with life in a coastal town.
We've got a lot of empty shops in a lot of our town centres, which is sort of causing a lot of death on the high street. I know that's a problem everywhere.
Similar problems across the border in Devon. Ilfracombe is the most deprived area in North Devon. Twice the town has applied for levelling up funding. Twice it's been turned down, something North Devon MP Selene Saxby says is frustrating.
It's very complicated. It's not as straightforward as just throwing money at the problem. They're very deep issues.
For several years, the government has acknowledged that rural areas need extra help, but so far that help doesn't stretch to our coasts. The MP for St Austell and Newquay is pushing the government to change all this.
Truly local people are finding it really challenging because we often have sort of low wage seasonal work but very high house prices pushed up because of second homes and holiday lets, etc. And also I think the disparity review that Theresa May carried out when she was Prime Minister highlighted that working class white boys in coastal communities are some of the most disadvantaged people in the country.
Struggling to get on the housing ladder, struggling to find work, struggling to be heard.
It's interesting that a member of the party that's in government recognises that, which is great, because it is a really important thing. But that government, for the last 10 years, has also cut £500 million in youth services around the country.
No one thinks the problem of coastal deprivation can be solved overnight. The issue of disaffected young white males even harder.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. It's 8:47 and it's time to go through the papers with our senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and former government advisor Claire Pearsall. Good to see you both. Very good morning to you. Nigel, let's start with page 4 of The Telegraph, shall we? And they're saying that Rishi Sunak opted for an early election after Treasury officials concluded there'd be no money left for meaningful tax cuts.
That's right, yeah. He ran out of money. That's the reason that the Telegraph gives. When you actually look at the figures, you can see why he did. That the comparison would be when Philip Hammond was Chancellor, he kept £60 billion in the kitty just in case of emergencies and giveaways or whatever. And Jeremy Hunt's only got £6 billion left. So he can't do any tax cuts later on in the year. So the idea of another tax-cutting budget was off the agenda. It was things like spending 2.5% of GDP on defence, which would cost about an extra $20 billion. And he's also got the various things like the infected blood scandal. That's going to cost us $10 billion. We still haven't sorted out the postmasters yet, but they're getting their compensation. That'll run into a lot of money. And of course, nobody's even thought about the WASPy women who are due compensation of something like $3 to $7 billion. So you can see that the cupboard is basically bare, and that's the reason that Rishi Sunak thought, OK, might as well go now because I've got nothing left.
Claire, you're not convinced?
Well, I think there are many reasons for calling an early election. I think probably one of them is that you do it now before anything gets much worse. You had some pretty good news in government terms with inflation. It seemed that that's about as good as it's going to get. You don't want to sit there over the summer being called a squatter in number 10, which is what the attack line from the Labour Party was going to be, and that he'd bottled out of calling an election. So I think that there were many factors to it. I don't just think it's a monetary aspect. I think that was part of it. But I think that you never trust your own colleagues to behave themselves either. And when we've looked at how many plots there are to remove prime ministers, not just Rishi Sunak, but previous prime ministers, you can understand why you might just think, do you know what, I'll go now before you lot have time to think and come up with another campaign against me.
Fair enough.
Claire, should we have a look at this breakthrough for breast cancer in the Telegraph? Yeah, now this is anything when it comes to medical, things that cure cancer, I think is always really fascinating. In breast cancer, one of those issues that will affect everybody at some point. Everybody will know somebody that has suffered. And this particular treatment will look at those cells which hide in those people that have recovered from breast cancer. These cells manage to hide themselves. They're immune to any kind of drugs, but they can fire up the cancer gene pretty much straight away if it so desires. And this drug in particular seeks out those cells to be able to destroy them because they're so undetected that nothing has been able to get rid of them. And it trains the body to search and destroy those particular cells so they don't grow up again.
It's blooming clever, isn't it? I mean, it is amazing.
It is getting. I mean, it is getting cleverer. And one of the things that's going on is that some of this, not this particular one, but thanks to COVID, they're developing new vaccines for all sorts of things, like for heart attacks and for cancer. And a lot of that's come through the research that happened when we were developing the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, well, it is one of the, obviously that's got mixed thoughts on that one, but it does generate all this extra information.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Yeah.
Can we talk knickers, please?
Certainly can.
I mean, undercrackers.
Good old pair of pants. Well, and it appears that M&S, which was the domain of the older individual, your granny pants, that's where they used to be bought. But now women, so a third of M&S underwear is now bought by the under-30s.
Right.
They have decided that it is comfortable, it is practical, it looks nice, and it's affordable. So young people are going back and they're looking at the designs now. M&S have really upped their game with this, and they're producing
nice-looking underwear for ladies, which is also practical. It washes well. All these things that you have to think about. And the under-30s are flocking.
Are they paying you?
I really wish they were. I'm open to career opportunities. But I also think that it's quite interesting that it's younger people now driving that kind of boom for something that is comfortable.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting with this is M&S has struggled for years.
It's a turnaround story.
If it can start pulling in a younger market...
Yeah, they
exactly
ought to. Yeah. I mean, I don't go shopping for knickers. I had a very bad experience in Victoria's Secret trying to get Claire some Christmas presents. With her...
What was...
her teenage son, but it's just really weird.
What you took?
Oh yeah, two blokes, a middle-aged bloke and this lad in Victoria's Secret trying to find Claire some presents. It was not very good. We had to actually appeal to a shopping assistant to help us out.
I can only imagine. It's the stuff of nightmares, Nigel. Did you have to calm down with a nice scream afterwards?
Well, the worst thing, everyone looks at you kind of oddly, as if, what are you doing in here?
Yeah, I know.
I think he's missed your segue.
Yes.
He's missed his own segue.
Your ice cream story.
Oh, the ice cream story.
Completely oblivious.
But you've now only got 20 seconds to get through it, Nigel.
Poor chap who's an ice cream salesman, and the council are taking out... he received a letter saying he's going to be prosecuted for noise pollution.
Oh.
Now, I sympathise with the residents there who are doing that, because it drives around the bend when the van comes round every summer.
No, Nigel.
It blares out one corner.
It's a lovely sound. Lovely sound. Sound of the summer, Nigel.
Nigel, Claire, thanks very much indeed.
Let's have a look at the weather now with Annie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you're exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine, highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in North Yorkshire. Station Street in York is closed because of an accident. In Derbyshire, the A50 is closed westbound from Junction 4 at Toyota Island to 5 at Hilton after a lorry caught fire causing long delays. Trains aren't stopping at Wolverhampton Station because of a signalling problem, with buses replacing trains between Wolverhampton and Birmingham International. On the M25 in Essex, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise just before Junction 26 at Waltham Abbey after an accident, with queues from Junction 27 for the M11. In Surrey on the A3, 2 lanes are closed northbound for emergency repairs between Hook and Tolworth with queues from Easham Common. In Kent, the A249 is partly blocked by an accident on the roundabout off junction 5 of the M2 at Sittingbourne, and there are delays of up to an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk. That's after a technical problem earlier on. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. 9 o'clock, Friday, the 24th of May. Today, the Prime Minister claims his Labour counterpart doesn't have the courage to debate him, as he has no plan for the country.
A new poll reveals that reform could pose a threat to 28 Tory seats. That's as a record number of Conservative MPs are set to stand down.
Reform's deputy leader has no knowledge of Nigel Farage's proposed constituency campaign, which he had planned for next week, so he says.
I had, to be honest with you, put in place some preparations to launch next week.
I'm Deputy Leader of Reform UK, as you mentioned, and I was entirely unaware of his plans to launch a campaign next week.
At least 4 people are dead and more than a dozen have been injured after a restaurant building collapses on a beach in Majorca.
The court is set to rule whether child killer Lucy Letby can appeal against her convictions.
Morning. It's a bit of a cooler day for most of us today, but how are things shaping up for the bank holiday weekend? Find out all the details with me a little later on.
Good morning, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Right, let's kick off, should we, with the Prime Minister launching the opening gambit of this election, accusing Sir Keir Starmer of lacking the courage to debate him.
Well, Rishi Sunak wants to debate Sir Keir Starmer every week in the run-up to polling day. This comes as the survey shows Reform UK threatening 28 Conservative seats across the country.
Let's talk to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's travelling with the Prime Minister as all this gets underway. The PM's obviously trying to put Sir Keir Starmer on the back foot, but Sir Keir hasn't said he won't debate, has he? He's just said he doesn't want to do it 6 times.
No, and morning, Steve. Morning, Ali here from Belfast, where we're travelling with the Prime Minister to a visit here. He's the first leader of the 4 big nations since this election was called by him on Wednesday night. We're barely 48, we're 36 hours into the campaign. He's been to all 4 nations. It's been a crazy story for me following him of trains, planes and automobiles. But you're right, I mean, he's ahead of the game. He's been planning this election campaign for a good week or so. Other parties have not yet done that, so they're trying to scramble to catch up with what to do next. Everyone was thinking there'd be a November election campaign. And that's why he's saying, I'll challenge you to as many debates as you want. Clearly, CCHQ feel that if they put Rishi Sunak against Keir Starmer, they think their guy wins. We're waiting to hear what Labour will do, whether they're going to do any debates, and indeed whether they'll come on a People's Forum with GB News, as we saw Rishi Sunak do with you, Stephen, early this year. So it's all to play for right now. There is some more good news for the PM with this fall in energy prices. He'll be able to say later that shows that his plan is working, that the cost of living is coming down. But there is also further news from Sir John Redwood, another Tory grandee quitting as an MP. So other big figures are leaving Mr Sunak just as he needs their support.
OK, Chris, thanks very much indeed. Short and sweet with Christopher. Obviously, the sound quality is not brilliant as he travels through Northern Ireland this morning, but we will get more from Christopher. And as he pointed out, in terms of a People's Forum, we have said from day one that we want to hold on with Sir Keir Starmer. He said at the time they wanted to see what happened with the Prime Minister. They wanted to watch it first to see whether they'd agree to do it. Still haven't agreed to do it. Let's hope they do, because we want to hear what he has to say.
That invitation is still very much open, isn't it? Well, let's get the thoughts now. Former Defence Select Committee Chairman Tobias Ellwood. Very good morning to you, Tobias. Good to see you. Let's stick to the topic of debate, shall we? Because it's on the front page of many of the papers this morning. Rishi Sunak really hoping to tackle this head-on, one every week, he says, until polling day. Do you think that's a wise idea?
Yeah, I mean, first let me comment on Nigel Farage, if I may, that you began your opening remarks with. I mean, amazing to see somebody that's so confident in what he does, in his manner, his demeanour, his passion for politics, and he's using the excuse of not being ready, but in a week's time. I just think that's really, I think that really is a bad excuse. He should have, if he's up for the fight, he should go for it. That's what you want to see: the passion, the vigour, the determination. I have to say I don't agree with much, but I've always admired his absolute resolute determination to have his voice heard. And I'm sorry to see him backing away in this way. And it shows, reflects a bit where reform is going. This is going to be a fight, going back to your question, about who is in number 10. Is it going to be Keir Starmer or is it going to be Rishi Sunak? And what's really interesting is the scrutiny that's now being sort of imposed onto Labour. I mean, Keir Starmer did many of the rounds today and was found wanting, I think, in many cases. It shows that when the election campaign starts, absolutely, we start to scrutinise and shine the spotlight exactly on what Labour stands for. It's all been on us. It's been on the Conservatives, not always for the right reasons. Now we're seeing, actually, the electorate getting an opportunity to compare like with like, to say, actually, given especially where the economy is going, who do I want running the country?
Well, yeah, that's a very fair point. Except, as you say, with the scrutiny that has been on the government, of course, there are a lot of people looking at the pledges. I mean, you've got to look at Rishi Sunak's key pledges, and he said when he launched those, judge me on whether I achieve these pledges. And frankly, he just hasn't. All right, inflation's come down. He halved inflation, except it wasn't really him that did that. It was the Bank of England. But he's failed on just about everything else. So people are going to go into this election saying the plan that he keeps saying they're on, and we need to keep going on with the progress. Well, we haven't made a lot of progress.
Well, I disagree with that. There's fiscal policy and there's monetary policy. The monetary policy is the Bank of England. Fiscal policy, the taxes that we choose to put up or indeed down, how we actually encourage growth and productivity in this country, what we're doing to get businesses working again, recruiting again, and, of course, security of supply, which a lot of this is about. That's why the inflation went up, and also food prices, because of the war in Ukraine. That's all to do with decisions made in number 10. But I'd also go to the key point of any election. Clinton famously said this: it's about the economy. It's the economy, stupid. It's how people will feel their own wallets, their bank accounts, their families impacted by the cost of living. Are things going to get better, or are they actually going to get worse? That's the big decision that I think that will ultimately determine. And with 20, 25% of voters still not even contributing into these polls, undecided, then there's still a lot to play for.
The topic of defence is very interesting, isn't it? Especially with Rishi Sunak's announcement of this general election on the 4th of July. He did put defence at the heart and centre of that announcement. We're yet to hear Labour's specific plans. I'm sure we'll see that fleshed out in their manifesto. But it is increasingly becoming an election issue, isn't it? It's what people are going to be looking at in the manifestos.
I'm really glad you said that, because often it's not a consideration. It's like people want to see the money spent on health and education. They want to see good policies, and they actually want to see a domestic focus. But absolutely, we've seen in the Red Sea and indeed in Ukraine as to how our global exposure is actually affected, impacts on our economy. Our economy and our security are symbiotically interconnected. If we don't invest in our defense posture, if we don't stand up to a very fast-changing world, then I'm afraid our economy, our prosperity, our own pockets will be affected. So how are we going to do this? The Prime Minister is right to say the next 5 years we'll see more change than in the last 30. I've been saying this for the last 10 years, that the world's getting more dangerous, not less. So the three things, in my view, that will actually determine this election is firstly the economy, as I mentioned, secondly the security, and thirdly a message to my own party, the passion, the commitment, the unity of what the party is all about. That's been missing. Let's show that we can actually do this. We go in to try and win. If we go in thinking we're going to lose, we probably will lose. So let's rally around the Prime Minister. We'll see those polls narrow as Labour comes under more scrutiny.
We're out of time, so I'm being yelled at, but I wanted to ask you this briefly, because you're a straightforward man and we've talked to you a lot. You tend to just say it how it is. Whatever policies, whatever the policy differences or agreements between the two big parties, how do the Conservatives deal with the fact that after 14 years, as is always the case, a lot of people in the country just want change?
That is the big question in any election. Do you stay with what you know? And that's been a bit difficult, let's be frank. You asked me to be plain talking. We've had a few changes in prime ministers, but Rishi Sunak has navigated us into calmer waters. So you're very clear with what you get with Rishi Sunak. Or do you then go for change? But don't forget, going back to the beginning of the 14 years, what was the situation that we actually inherited just after that financial crisis? Labour were borrowing 150 billion pounds a year that they didn't have. Okay, that was the situation back then. So we inherited an awful situation. Then we had Ukraine, of course. Then we had the COVID crisis too. Challenges that would have actually tested any government, whoever was in number 10. So it's now up to the electorate to decide who's best fit to take us forward into these difficult times.
OK, Tobias Ellwood, really good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Earlier on, we spoke to Reform UK's Deputy Leader Ben Habib about what he thought of Nigel Farage revealing his plan to begin a constituency campaign next week. But he didn't seem too sure of it. Let's take a listen.
I had, to be honest with you, put in place some preparations to launch next week. I wonder whether the Conservative Party found out about it. I think the sense of panic that we saw yesterday, the badly prepared speech, might perhaps have prompted it a little bit.
To be clear, you were about to launch a campaign to stand as an MP next week.
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure how much Nigel Farage played in the Prime Minister's mind. I think there were a whole host of other reasons which moved him to call an election now. And I think from Rishi's perspective, it was probably a good move.
Are you saying then you don't believe Nigel? I mean, because the idea that he's got. Hold on a minute. The idea that he's got a general election campaign ready to roll next week, and he was planning to do it, and because of this announcement, he's shelved the whole thing. It's a bit unusual.
Well, I'm Deputy Leader of Reform UK, as you mentioned, and I was entirely unaware of his plans to launch a campaign next week.
Very interesting, that, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. It's up to you who you believe on that one, but it's interesting. Not all plain sailing. Earlier, we also spoke to the Lib Dems and their local government spokesperson about their pledge to hire new GPs.
Well, I think we've always been able to influence the agenda, even though we're not a particularly big party. So if you look, for example, at the windfall tax, we started calling for one of those in October 21 to help people out with their energy bills. That later became Labour policy, and then that became government policy. So it's really, really important to set the agenda. And we have proved that we can be effective in coming up with really good ideas that make people's lives better and getting government to run with them ultimately. Well, urgent appointments would have a right within 24 hours. So obviously people who are really, really poorly need to see their GP straight away. And that's enshrined in this plan as well. But at the moment, if your issue is non-urgent, lots of people are waiting over 2 weeks. I've just waited over 5 here in Shropshire. So there are a lot of people who would really benefit from this right to see their GP within a week. And I think it's really important to have a high standard to work to, so that people can feel confident that they are going to be seen, that they're going to be able to get back to work, and that they're going to be able to continue with their life as normal.
That's Helen Morgan from the Lib Dems speaking to us a little bit earlier on in the programme. Now, 13 minutes past 9, emergency services reported at least 4 people have been killed and 16 have been injured after a building collapsed on a beach in Majorca.
Well, let's get the very latest for you from our reporter Charlie Peters, who's been watching this develop over the last few hours. So what exactly is going on, Charlie?
Well, at 8:40 last night, it's understood that the terrace on top of the Majorca Beach Club on the beachfront in Playa de Palma in Majorca collapsed in a 2-storey building into the basement of this restaurant when it was in its full swing of its evening service. We understand that several German tourists were there last night, and it was very quickly declared as a critical incident for the island's emergency services. All available ambulances were rushed to the scene. Over 100 emergency services workers were attending, including the fire brigade. And we also understand a commercial crane was involved to remove some of the rubble and the glass and the steel that gathered in this collapse. Although they are doing it very carefully, because there are fears that in the removal of rubble, where 4 people have been killed and 7 remain in a critical condition, that the rest of the building might collapse because of it. We also understand that this terrace was only opened on Wednesday. It's a new development for the beach club. So that will add some speculation as to what could have caused this collapse. There's no recent trend of collapsing buildings on the island, and there weren't any adverse weather effects yesterday that could have contributed to it. But some of the stories coming out from the witnesses last night and the police spokespeople are quite extraordinary. They were urging people to remain silent as the fire brigade and the rescue workers worked through the night in order to listen for the sounds of any signs of life under the rubble, a desperate scenario. But while that was going on, and while both the adjacent restaurants and bars shut down immediately, there were still some bars along the beach playing music and serving drinks last night, which could have frustrated those rescue efforts. Several people were pulled out. One man was trapped in a cavity created by the collapse with an injured arm, incredibly lucky. And on site there, alongside the ambulances and the rescue services, there are also some psychologists from the local college to deal with those who could be traumatised by what is obviously a hectic and appalling situation to be caught up in.
OK.
Just
Charlie.
terrific.
Thank you for now. I know Charlie's going to keep us up to date with that throughout the course of the day. Just a quick word from you on the debate issue. And we need to be clear about this. The Prime Minister is saying Keir Starmer's running away from debates because he said he wants to do 6, 1 a week. So Keir Starmer isn't up for that. I mean, how you'd squeeze it in, I don't know, because they're actually quite complicated. Jason Gale, hi Jason. Starmer doesn't want to do debates over various issues that he's raising there. Keir Starmer hasn't said he doesn't want to do debates, he doesn't want to do 6. He sort of said he's prepared to do 2. Apparently, but this is how politics works. So it's not. So there will be some. There's bound to be some debates, just not 6. So it's just for clarity on that, in case you're misunderstanding the situation there. I mean, who do you think would win? I don't know. Interestingly, where's that message gone? Sandra Pearson. It's reflecting, I think, what a lot of people think. You can't trust any of them. They're all the same, self-serving individuals. I personally think that's a bit unfair because we know some as individuals. You get to meet them in this job and, you know, some of them are quite nice people. But it's interesting, if that's the general sort of attitude, they're all the same, you can't trust them, that's not a good way to be thinking about British politics in 2024, and that needs to be addressed by whoever wins and whoever is in opposition come July the 5th.
Because I think there are a lot of people that feel that way if you talk to people on the street. And I think there could potentially be a lot of people that decide to sit at home during this election. We hope we don't. We hope we go out to vote for whoever you want to vote for. But, of course, I think there will be many people who don't want to vote for any of them.
Yeah, could well be. Let's cheer you up a little bit this morning with the Great British Giveaway, because you could win £20,000 in cash in time for summer. What would you spend it on?
Yeah, have a little think, because time is ticking on for your chance to make it yours. Here's how.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yeah, best of luck to you on that one.
Now, do stay with us. Still to come, we're going to be going live to our reporter in Manchester to get more on Lucy Letby's appeal on her convictions. That's going to be decided later today.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
The Eurovision, according to figures out this morning, had its most disastrous night to date because viewing figures were down by 2.5 million.
So the BBC had a drag queen on telling everyone that she was boycotting it.
Who was boycotting it?
Someone called Crystal, who came on the Newsnight to say that she was boycotting her North London party because of Israel. So maybe that's why the figures are down.
They cancelled some Eurovision parties in gay bars in Soho.
Exactly. So I wonder whether that's what did it.
North London party.
I think the whole of Dalston basically not tuning in is what's caused this massive drop in ratings because of the whole controversy around Israel. I have to say, a lot of those performers needed to go and see a hygienist. I mean, that man who was the Irish entry, who's supposed to be a satanic witch. She does pop witchery or something.
She screeched.
And she screeched a lot, and then took her clothes off. Yeah. And then there was a sort of devil man who was gyrating around her, who obviously hadn't cleaned his teeth in years.
That was the vodka break.
Okay, fine.
That was the vodka break. When I went and got.
And I thought the Israeli entry. I mean, I didn't really like the song. I liked her dress.
But I just voted for it because
I thought the choreography was awful.
I hated the way she was besieged in a hotel room.
But I did also think that the Ukraine entry was quite interesting because I know that the Israeli entry got into trouble for referencing the October 7th attacks, and she had to sort of rewrite her stuff because you're not allowed to mention the war or anything like that, which is fine. But then the Ukraine entry was very war. I mean, they had kind of gunfire coming in over her.
The whole thing, there was double standards.
There was quite a lot of that,
I mean, the people outside, the queers of Palestine.
Are we going to carry on paying for it, though? Because, I mean, the BBC pays the lion's share of it. That's us.
Yeah.
And we do spectacularly badly every year.
Now, the child serial killer Lucy Letby will find out today whether her bid to challenge her convictions at the Court of Appeal has been successful.
Well, we're joined now by our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper. Good morning to you, Sophie. What are we expecting to happen later today?
Well, good morning to you both. Well, there are some incredibly tight reporting restrictions around this case, but there are a few things that I can tell you. For example, the fact that Letby and her legal team launched this application all the way back in September of last year. That's against convictions for crimes committed while she worked here at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Now, last month, that application was heard by a panel of 3 judges at the Court of Appeal, and over the course of the 2.5 days, those judges did come to a decision. However, they reserved the judgment, which means we didn't actually get to hear the decision that they had come to. However, that is what we're expecting to happen this morning, a short hearing at the Court of Appeal where we will learn the outcome of Letby's application. Now, there are essentially 3 different outcomes that we could get today. First of all, we could hear that Letby's application has been denied, and what that essentially would mean is that unless fresh evidence were to come to light, Letby would be at the end of her appeal process and she would be spending the rest of her life in prison. The second outcome is that it could be the application itself is approved, but then the appeal is denied. Now, what that would mean is that this particular appeal is denied, but that she and her legal team could approach the Supreme Court if they felt a point of law of general public importance did exist. Now, the final outcome that we could reach is that the application and the appeal were both approved, and what that could mean is essentially that her convictions were potentially overturned, and we are expecting the next hour to hear which of those 3 outcomes is the case. So if all goes ahead, we'll be bringing you all the latest here on GB News.
Okay, thank you, Sophie Reaper, in Chester for us.
OK, that is it from us. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Up next, Britain's Newsroom with Nana Acquia and Mark Dolan.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you're exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some breeze, some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine, highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In North Yorkshire, Station Street in York is closed each way because of an accident. In Derbyshire, the A50 is closed westbound from junction 4 for the A38 at Toyota Island to 5 at Hilton after a lorry caught fire. There are long delays towards there. Now, trains aren't stopping at Wolverhampton station because of a signalling problem, with buses replacing trains between Wolverhampton and Birmingham International. On the M25 in Essex, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise just before junction 26 at Waltham Abbey after an accident, with queues from junction 27 for the M11. In Surrey on the A3, 2 lanes are closed northbound for emergency repairs between Hook and Tolworth, with queues from Esher Common, and there are delays of up to an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk, and that's after a technical problem earlier on. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So the UK's most popular baby names have been revealed, with Noah and Olivia again topping the annual list. In at number 2 is Mohammed for boys. List is on the screen here. Number 3 for boys is George. Then it goes Olivia. Then it's Leo, Arthur, and so on. And for girls, so Olivia is number 1. Then Amelia, Isla, Ava, Lily, Ivy, Freya. There we go. Any of those names take your pick? Where's Dawn, by the way?
Well, yeah, there's on the Telegraph website, right, there's a really good way linked into this where you can actually put your name into the search engine, and these are names from 2022, by the way, and it tells you how common your name was. And I did put Dawn in. It's never been that popular. Can't think why. And there were only 5 babies named Dawn in 2022.
Really? That's surprising.
It's not wow. Full confession here, right? My middle name, Mum, I hate you, is Maureen. Why is everyone laughing? My middle name is Maureen, which is a good old-fashioned East End name, and that has completely died out. There were no babies named Maureen.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Names like Keith, for example, Peter. Would you call a baby these days Keith or Ian? Baby Ian?
Without a doubt. I feel like I'm in a persecuted minority, you see, because later on, when I'm watching the boxing with Terry, Steve, Mick, Phil and Kev, right, and Peter, there are no such names featuring